It's a weekly geeky blog. I am your host and writer behind 99geek.ca, Andrew Getzey. As primarily a fiction writer, releasing chapters of my books in weekly chunks on my Patreon, like episodes of TV shows when I'm not working nights in Poverty Nightmare or getting fired from working nights at a Poverty Nightmare to make ends meet. I want my brand, 99% Geek, to offer more content that might keep people coming back. I don't have much to offer. God, I'm doing horrible so far besides my writing, but I'm passionate about pop culture and try to keep myself as up to date on politics, science, and art as I can. Being a huge TV nerd, I run down the best shows of the week, go over all the major news headlines for people who have maybe gotten too tired to follow regular news, breaking it down and explaining it for people who might feel unable to follow along. And before anything else, I spotlight something cool and geeky for the week. Remember, you can follow along by going to patreon.com/99geek. This is Geekly Weekly number 84 for the week of Friday, February 5th. And this is being recorded on Friday, February 5th at 2 p.m. And this week's highlight was hard to pick. I didn't really have a highlight for the week. Actually, I did have a highlight for the week. It was WandaVision. And if you didn't watch WandaVision, I haven't watched this week's yet. Don't spoil anything for me. I pray to God Kat Dennings is in it more because she was amazing. She was the highlight of the week. It should have been Kat Dennings. But I'm very excited for this TV show coming out on Sunday called The Equalizer. It's a reboot of a reboot. It was originally shown in the 80s with some white British guy named. I saw the name repeatedly, but I forgot it and I don't really care. Then it was rebooted with Denzel Washington. I believe it's an action movie. I honestly don't think I've seen either. I might have seen the Denzel movie at some point as a kid, but I can't remember. Um, but now they're doing it again on CBS as a TV show with Queen Latifah, which I think is fun. When I What's going on here? Did my thing freeze for a second? Nope, it's fine. Let's see here. Let me see if I can pause something in case. All right. Where was I? Oh yes, Queen Latifah. When I saw the trailer for that show, it reminded me a lot of. Um, do you guys remember that movie with Michael Caine where it's like he's an action hero and he's kicking ass? It's like it's Michael Caine, he's kicking ass. And I mean, there was Taken where it was Liam Neeson and he was kicking ass. I think Taken was probably the first one. It was like we didn't expect him to be an action hero and he was like a 50-year-old man and it's like there he is kicking ass. And you're like, that's awesome. And then Michael Caine did it next and you're like, that's awesome. And then now it's Queen Latifah, 50-year-old woman fucking this kicking ass and I love it. I think it's great. And I'm excited. But when I was doing the sort of research for this week's episode and putting it in the predictions for next week, I noticed there is a big movement going on right now with people complaining because they think that this is just woke and diverse casting. Like, oh my God, here it is again. Um, as always, all they care about is patting themselves on the back because they did it. They cast a black woman in a role of a man, and it was just like I pissed me off. For one thing, Queen Latifah would never give a shit about diversity casting. For here, let me just read what I actually wrote instead of speaking out of my butt. First off, Queen Latifah is a queen. She doesn't have time for any of your woke diversity bullshit. If anything, I would guess that she has been working out a lot lately and said, "Hey, I want to play a role where I get to kick some ass like everyone else is doing." And when you're Queen Latifah, people give you what you want. She probably got laughed out of a bunch of meetings until CBS was like, "Well, we have this Equalizer property we've been wanting to do something with, and that's how this shit works." Not, we want to make a show. Okay, how many colored women can we fit in this time? I hate it. I just hate all this hate and bullshit. And these people keep going on, we're not racist or sexist. It's like, no, you kind of are actually. Like, fuck off. Like, just enjoy what you're getting. Like, it doesn't ruin the old shit. You can still watch the old shit and enjoy it. And it's not like if they had cast a man that in that role that it would somehow maintain the like it could still be awful in with a man in the role just as it could be great in with a woman in the role like like a man in the role could just as easily ruin the legacy or whatever that it is that they're praying for. um I think it's just fun to do something new and interesting, and I don't give a shit about the Equalizer as a property, but I do give a shit about Queen Latifah, and if she's gonna kick some ass, I think that's awesome. So she is not the highlight. Well, she is the highlight always. Um, the show The Equalizer is not the highlight 'cause I haven't seen it yet. But I thought I would. I recently, I think it was in December, I was looking for Christmas stuff to watch, and I came upon The Last Holiday, and I'd seen it once as a kid, but I hadn't seen it since. And it's an enjoyable, feel good movie. I was surprised how much it held up, especially because I'd seen other movies from that era that don't hold up. So it's fun to find ones that some that do, and this is definitely one of them. It's just a feel good movie. Also, um, what's his those Carlos in it? What's his name? The freaking Darth Gideon from Giancarlo Esposito is freaking in Last Holiday as a major role. So if you're enjoying him as Moff Gideon on The Mandalorian and you've never really seen him in other roles, check out The Last Holiday. It's pretty great. And it's just a fun time. It's just Queen Latifah being awesome. And I love it. And I think it's worth being the highlight of the week, even though it's an old property. A lot of times the highlight of the week is it's just something cool to check out for the week. And this week, in preparation for the Equalizer on Sunday, check out The Last Holiday. Moving on from there to the Geekly Weekly TV rankings. Starting at the bottom, there are 7 items on the list this week. There could have been 8, but I didn't get to Resident Alien. I'm sorry for all you um, Alan Tudyk fans. I like him too. I'm a fan too, but unfortunately, there just wasn't time. It's my time management issues all over the place. I just couldn't do it. But starting at the bottom, Saturday Night Live with 3 stars. It was fine. It was a perfectly fine Saturday Night Live. I saw some articles suggesting this could be proof comedy is less funny without Trump, but I really think we had worse episodes under Trump, so they can shut their damn mouths. Fair enough. None of the sketches were particularly great, but I feel like they all had a great joke or two hidden in them. And they had me laughing here or there intermittently. One joke in the weekend update had me laughing where they were like, Sharks are having a big year with already 10 attacks this year. And then they're like, that's adorable, says Bats. Get it? Because COVID. That's funny. Moving on from there, number 6 on the list, American Gods, 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed this episode more than I was expecting it to. There were a lot of great individual moments that I really enjoyed, even though I feel like I was really bored in between them. So it was like I spent half of the episode bored and half of the episode really enjoying it. And it wasn't like it was like bored and then enjoying it or enjoying it and then bored. It was like just I would be really enjoying it for like 5 minutes and then just be bored out of my mind for the next 5 minutes. I don't know how it manages to do that, how it manages to suck me back in and then pull me back out again every single time. But like it's really good at doing that. Um, it was also fascinating to see Crispin Glover come back. I thought he was gone from the show. I thought they'd gotten rid of him for whatever reason, or he dropped out because he didn't have enough money or whatever. But now I'm starting to think maybe he just probably had to wait for like COVID. A lot of these, because I've been seeing this on a lot of shows. The Goldbergs did it as well this week, where Matt Bradley wasn't in for the entire episode. They even made a thing like, "Oh, he's in San Francisco." And then at the end of the episode, and he's back, and he's just standing there, leaning on the wall. It's a hilarious moment, but it makes me wonder if maybe him and Crispin Glover had COVID issues and they were stuck in quarantine or something, so they weren't able to film with everyone else. And then when they got out, they would just say, "Ta-da, I'm back," and then they just move on like nothing happened. That's what I'm wondering could be what's going on here, because you're seeing the same sort of thing with multiple shows, and that's just kind of fun and interesting, and makes them have to come up with creative story solutions. Goldberg's I thought did a lot better. I thought it was kind of weird and off-putting what how they had Mr. World become a black woman for 2 episodes, which was like fine. I'm not really digging her, but I can dig it. But then she changes back into Crispin Glover for no reason whatsoever. This why? And are we going to see her again? Like, if they want to just be like, oh, Mr. Roll just changes his appearance a lot, then why doesn't he change back and forth all the time? Why is it just he does it once and then it's just frustrating? But I mean, this whole show has been frustrating. So what can you do? I enjoyed Shadow and Tech Boy working together though. I enjoyed Laura and everything she was in. I love Emily Browning in this. She might be the only reason I'm still watching, so it's a good thing they're keeping her around. I heard she has much less to do in the book than she does in the show. So good job to the writers for recognizing where their strengths are, at least. Fuck Marilyn Manson. He had a scene in this, and it was awful, and I hated it. I really wanted to give up on the show right then and there. Apparently they cut him out from the rest of the show, which is kind of funny because it seemed like they were building up something with him, and then it's just gone. You don't need to worry about that anymore. Cool, whatever. So we don't need to worry about seeing him again. Apparently they've cut him out of every other episode. Uh, I feel like I spent half the episode bar on my mind, the other half glued to my seat. Yeah, it's true. I can't even tell now. I'm so confused if the opening of this episode was actually good and reminiscent of season one's little vignettes, or if it was really heavy-handed and forced and trying too hard to be like season one's vignettes. There's a thin line between just right and too much, and that thin line moves based on my level of engagement with the show. As it is now, I'm ready to call bullshit at the drop of a hat. So there's that. That's why it only got 3.5, despite being a somewhat enjoyable episode. Moving on to Batwoman at the number 5 spot with 4 stars. So if you only have time for 5 shows this week, Batwoman probably should have made your list. In season 1, Alice was pretty easily my favorite character, but this was the first episode in season 2 where I found myself enjoying her as much as I did in season 1. Everything to do with her being captured with Sophie was a lot of fun and a little silly, while also propelling the story forward in a major way. I also enjoyed Mary taking the new Batwoman's side and being supportive of her, and there was some fun comedy with her parole officer that was fine. Finally, Zaz was amazing. I saw the pre-production shots of Zaz, and I was kind of disappointed that it wasn't just the guy from Gotham. Like, they could just got of if they were to only bring one actor from Gotham and just be like, nah, just like how Spider-Man, it was just like recasts everyone, but J.K. Simmons it still just happens to be Jonah Jameson. And it's like, because of course he's the only J. Jonah Jameson. And if they were to do that with one person from Gotham, I would have picked Zaz. If you watch that show, Zaz was just a joy. I sort of felt like when I was watching Gotham that he didn't feel much like the comic book version of Zaz. I saw some comments online where other people were saying, "Oh, that he was perfectly exactly like the comic book version of Zaz," but my idea is that for one thing, they didn't really deal with his scars and how he cuts himself every time he kills someone, which is a like his one his like only trait in the comics. The one thing everyone knows about Zaz is that he's covered in scars that he's inflicted on himself, and they didn't even really deal with that in Gotham at all. So he never really felt like the comic book villain to me. But that said, he was just a joy to watch and super fun the whole series through. So seeing him recast here, I was worried that it wouldn't be the same kind of joy. And thankfully, this guy too was a lot of fun. Like as soon as he was on the screen, he was just hamming it up and cheesing it up and with a grin on his face and being ridiculous, and it was amazing, and I loved it. He was definitely the highlight of the episode for sure, and I hope we see more of him this season. And we might too. I don't think they beat him or arrested him or anything. Like, actually, that's not 100% true. I do believe Batwoman saves Mary, beats the shit out of him, and then they just leave him in the alley because I guess that's what you do with criminals. You just leave them so that they can come back and do more later. Whatever. You know what? I'm not gonna complain. Whatever. Moving on from there, number 4, Shameless, also with 4 stars. For the most part, I enjoyed that episode. It was better than I was expecting for a climax. Nope, I missed the wrong spot. This was a fun episode. Between the ongoing shenanigans and the Milkovich, I was like, it wasn't a climax. What am I talking about? Between the ongoing shenanigans and the Milkoviches, Carl's partner cutting herself with her own machete, V uncovering that all the people of color have left her neighborhood, and Debbie trying to figure out what her girlfriend did during her days away, it was all fun and engaging. I'm not quite sure what Lip was thinking, putting all that work at a place he was just read. That was the most frustrating thing, probably about this whole season, is just how much work he put into that house when he was just. And I knew from the beginning that was a bad idea. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're treating this house like you own it, but you don't. You just rent it. It's so dangerous. Do you not understand? He did not understand, but The guy, and he's so lucky too because like the landlord seems chill enough to be like, "Hey, I'll pay you the labor, I'll pay you the," which I mean, awesome. Like if I were to repaint a place that I was renting, I would expect them to pay for the paint, sure, but I wouldn't expect them to pay for the labor. The fact that he's paying for the labor as well is pretty impressive. Um, what else? That's all I had written there, but it was a fun episode. My problem is that I always forget to write these until like a day later, and I'm like, what the hell happened? Don't smoke pot, kids. But I enjoyed it. I still like Debbie's girlfriend, even though she clearly keeps a bunch of secrets. Um, I Frank's cool. Oh, there was the whole thing with Liam that was fine. I found the ending whatever. I didn't find it hilarious or anything, but I guess it's nice that Papa Milkovich is now presumably dead. Um, he deserved it, I guess. Oh my God, I forgot. I forgot about the scene where Frank tried to kill the old lady. That was a good time. Anyway, moving on from there. To the top three. We're at the top three. Bum ba da 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 dum bum bum ba. Starting at number three was The Stand. It got its climax episode this week. Um, I thought it was the finale. It sure felt like the finale. It did end somewhat abruptly, but I was still ready to be like, all right, we're done. Because I mean, there's nothing, no more of the story to tell. But for some reason, we're getting one more episode after this one. I guess the last episode is going to be like the last 30 minutes of Return of the King. Just a bunch of singing, and it'd be hilarious if it's just Godspell. You tune in for the last hour, and it's just day by day. These three things we pray. I hate Godspell so much. But it would absolutely be fitting. I kind of want it to be that now. Skarsgård, I felt was a little off at points. Sometimes he worked, sometimes he didn't. I thought that the treatment of the prisoners was a lot kinder than I was expecting. It almost seemed like they were granted a relief. It's like while everybody else is suffering and shit, you get to drown in water and no torture or anything. It seemed pretty. And then there's the whole everything and the nuke and everything. And again, relief. But I did appreciate when the shit hit the fan and that thing came down and everyone started exploding into goo. I thought that so there were some really grisly deaths in that episode that made the episode worth watching, if nothing else. Grisly but fun deaths, the kind of deaths where you're like, oh fuck. It's great, good time. Yeah, that was The Stand. Again, one more episode to come. We'll see how that final episode is going to be. It was pretty good. Again, 4 stars. It's too bad the show, uh, for the entirety wasn't as strong as this episode. Like, I feel like this was a 20 episode show, a mini series that's 20 episodes long. So it's just like a one season show, a single season show. I don't even think that's ever been done. But a planned single season show that's 20 episodes and then it's done, and you have that long burn of like living through the apocalypse and like the characters developing and growing. And then you got to this final episode and it was that fucking crazy and awesome. And then you have another episode where you resolve all those characters that you've developed all that way. Like, yeah, that would all make sense. But as it is now, it feels like they just rushed to get to this part, and this part was really cool. But all that stuff before it was shit that was really cool in the miniseries and really cool in the book. It was the shit that we cared about, and you rushed all of that to get to the part that usually they fuck like. This is the part that believe usually gets fucked up. Like I don't think it really worked well in the miniseries. Even in the book, it kind of comes off as what the fuck did I just read? Um, it just and like everyone you care, a lot of them just start dying. It just was all for nothing and it's meaningless. It's like what the fuck? Um, and yet in this they really did a good job of it. And it's just too bad that it seemed like they just really wanted to be like, we really want to do a good job of this, but then they didn't really give any attention to everything else, really. And that's just too bad, in my opinion. But this was a good ending to it at least, so that was good. Moving on from there to the second best show of the week, surprisingly, The Goldbergs. It was a really fun episode this week, I thought. Had a lot of fun with it. Even the parts the parts of the episode I didn't like, there were still things in that I would like. It would be surrounded by funny jokes and things like that, so it wouldn't bother me. Um, the two of the show's best characters, Jeff and Matt Bradley, both had great moments in it, and in a way, the show is focused on both of them. Matt Bradley more focused on how he wasn't there, and how that was affecting Barry, and then at the end when he reappeared, that was a good time. I also enjoyed the storyline between Bev and Murray somewhat. Um, I'm always complaining about these characters being stuck into formulas and just doing the same things over and over again. On some level, that was Beverly this episode, but more I feel, and I don't say this very often, but I feel like it was Murray this time that was too stuck in his formula, his thing that he's. How many times has he learned this lesson now? You know, to be kinder to his wife, and then the next episode he forgets and has to learn the lesson all over again. Everyone's just got that same formula they put into an episode, and this time Murray felt just a little too formulaic. Whereas Beverly, while still being somewhat formulaic, switched up a little and did some fun, weird things. And for instance, Erica this week, I felt like she played against her formula, where she was being more responsible and supportive than she usually is, and like showed a certain level of growth that I feel was earned throughout the episode. And that's just an example of how you don't necessarily need to have the characters play to their formula all the time. Uh, and so overall, I thought, despite not being perfect, I thought it was a more fun than usual episode of the Goldbergs, and then in a week where um, a lot of shows were far from perfect, somehow Goldbergs became a highlight. At the top of the list, of course, without a doubt, is WandaVision. Just the best episode they've had yet. I loved it. I loved everything to do with it. It was focused on everything going on outside of the bubble, Wanda's bubble, and we got to hang out with Darcy for a while, and the guy from Ant-Man and the Wasp, Jimmy Woo, I think is the actor's name. uh, uh, Randall Park is the actor's name. Jimmy Woo is the character name. I got it right. Ha 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 ha. So there. Yeah, that's Randall Park. I guess I should have. I mean, I knew that was Randall Park, but at the same time, I didn't put together that Randall Park is also the same guy from the other things that I know Randall Park from. But yeah, I love Darcy. I love Darcy in Thor 1 and 2, even though those aren't the greatest movies, and she always felt like a highlight. And seeing her come here and just be all out on her own and steal the scene again and show that she can hold something on her own. You know, like she held up this episode completely on her own. And I absolutely feel like that proves that she should be in the MCU more, and we need more of her. And the way that this episode wrote her, it certainly gave her the like it definitely there's it leveled her up. I think there's something of a trope, a writing trope that's known as the level up, where you kind of don't see a character for a while, and then when they come back, suddenly they're just a lot better than they were before. And it's like now she's where before she was the assistant, and she never really seemed very scientific. Like she always seemed like she was more there for the physical labor and less there to like help them with the math and the science and stuff. But in this now, she's a physicist. She's a doctor. She must have a PhD. She's people are saying she's on the same level as Natalie Portman was. So Jane Foster. So that's pretty cool. And with that level up, now she can be more useful. So they'll have more reason for her to show up in other things. She can help solve issues. She can be the Eric Selvig of the MCU now, which is really excites the crap out of me. I want to see her in everything. I think she proved that she deserves to be in everything because she's just so much fun in this episode. Um, and this episode was worth the whole show. Can't wait to watch the next one. Probably gonna do it after this. I might not. I might keep working on Dakota Slade and check out WandaVision tonight, but it doesn't really matter. Either way, I will see it before anything else, and it'll be amazing, I'm sure. Hopefully there'll be Darcy. Hopefully she's in it again. Moving on from the TV rankings now. Now we can move on to the Geekly predictions. Yay! I forgot that I moved around the things. So this is the Geekly predictions. Starting at the top, The Equalizer, obviously, considering the highlight was Queen Latifah movie. I'm kind of excited for this sequel. Do I think it's going to be the greatest show ever? No. It kind of looks like it could be the sort of procedural that's not my cup of tea. Generally, these sort of network procedurals, like CSIs, even the Lucifers. Like I watch every comic book show on TV, and yet somehow I don't watch Lucifer, and it's because I watched an episode and I was just like, so this seems like another cop procedural, and I just moved along because I've that's how done I've been with cop procedurals for a long, long time. Pretty much since Castle, I guess, was the last one that I gave a strong chance to. Um, and so, I mean, this could very well just feel like another network procedural, and then I might give up on it in an episode or two. But just the idea of Queen Latifah kicking a bunch of ass sounds pretty awesome, and I'm definitely going to give it a chance. Moving on from there, the second prediction I'm making, there were a bunch of, like, a lot of TV seems to be coming back this coming week. Not necessarily good TV. um, the Snoopy Show is apparently a show that's premiering on Apple Plus. I don't have Apple Plus. Few people probably do, but I watched the trailer and it seemed charming. It seemed like it seemed like the Peanuts at their best. Like when I think of like when I've ever enjoyed the Peanuts, I was looking at that and I was like, yeah, that looks like the stuff of the Peanuts that I remember enjoying. And so I'm sure that could be a fun silly time if you feel nostalgic for Peanuts. You might want to check out the Snoopy Show. Moving on from there to the third prediction, Black Lightning. It's one of my least favorite CW shows. I'm not super excited for it. Plus, it's ending this season, so it's not like there's very much reason to watch it if you haven't watched it yet. But if you have been watching it, then keep in mind that it's premiering on Monday. What more do you want from me? Clarice, number 4 on the list is Clarice. I couldn't care less for this either. Because it's probably just another cop procedural, and it's probably a lot like that other one and the other one, the other one. I was thinking like Blacklist and Prodigal Son or whatever, where it's like you gotta work with the killer or whatever. I don't know. Honestly, it could not be that. It could just be Clarice and her dealing with killers, or I don't care. And the point is, more procedural bullshit that I probably am not going to give a crap about. Um, but if that's your thing, and if you're looking forward to that, it seems like CBS has a lot of cool procedural stuff coming out. So if you're into procedurals, or if you're just bored and you actually, like if you're one of those people who sit around at home like, man, I just want to feel like the world is normal again, then maybe some procedural shows like this will help you feel like everything's normal again. So yeah, that was the fourth thing. I checked to see if there's anything that's in the video games. Nothing really. Movies. Nothing really. It's all just seem to be TV. So which is fine, I guess. Everyone loves watching TV. Moving on from there to the Geekly news headlines. Starting at the top, meme stock rally rescues AMC theaters with $600 million debt. Man, this story goes all over the place throughout this week, so hold on tight. If this is where we're starting, then shit's gonna get wild. I'm sure you already know. This is a story on Polygon.com by Owen S. Good on January 29th, 2021. Theater chain gets unexpected lifeline when private equity trades a corporate IOU for stock. So it sounds like even if their stocks dropped after this, they win. This week's bizarre meme stock rally, which has delivered lottery-like windfalls for holders of GameStop stock, also wiped out $600 million in debt owed by AMC theater chains. That's because on Wednesday, a private equity firm named Silver Lake, and private equity firms are popularly considered the bad guys in this snobs versus slobs drama, elected to convert the corporate bonds it held into AMC Entertainment Holdings stock. Although the theater chain stock price has tumbled and soared since the move, the debt relief is permanent. Interesting. In November, AMC was warning investors that there is substantial doubt about our ability to continue as a going concern. The reason is obvious. The COVID-19 pandemic has savaged the movie theater business, and the broader stimulus, payroll, and recovery actions by the US government have done little to prop it up. However, on Monday, AMC CEO and President Adam Aron painted a less bleak outlook for the company after it secured $917 million of new equity and debt capital, saying in a new release, this means that any talk about imminent bankruptcy for AMC is completely off the table. It's insane to me how these imaginary numbers can somehow turn into real numbers. Just blows my mind. Wiping out more than half a billion, like, congrats. I'm so glad you got that second chance. Wiping out more than $500 million in debt, though, should take a lot of pressure off AMC in the short term. It reminds me of there's like a line I think in Arrow or something like that where he's bankrupt at one point. He's poor, and then somebody maybe even him points out that being poor for the rich is different than being poor for everyone else. You know, like when you're rich and poor, you still have a mansion and you still have everything, and you can still come back easily, and you still have liquid, and you still like you still have things when you're rich and you lose everything. You still have everything. Like it's just a different world. It's a different world for rich people than it is for everyone else, and it's fucked. Just as it's a different world for like attractive people and unattractive people. Like people talk about the world being everyone being equal, but it's not true. It's not. Equality is far from being a reality. Oh, where was I? As of this weekend, AMC was third on the list of U.S. stocks being short sold the most. Redditors in the Reddit Wall Street Bet subreddit and elsewhere have piled into these shorted stocks because essentially institutional investors are betting that companies will fail and their share prices will go down. The collective action of Reddit's day traders, retail investors as the industry calls them, has driven some share prices up, with GameStop's headline making rally leading the charge. Yet by converting their AMC debt holding to AMC stock, the Silver Lake equity firm has gotten hurt by a falling stock price too. The conversion price for the bond Silver Lake held was $13.51. Silver Lake cashed in on Wednesday when AMC's shares ended the day at $19.90, more than 400% better than the day before. Smart move, right? Well, AMC's share price at publication time Friday was about $15, but it closed Thursday at $8.63. So unless Silver Lake found some other sucker to buy the stock before it bottomed out, they've been riding a roller coaster that at best has them about 5% to 7% ahead of their original position, with no guarantee of staying there. I don't really know what those convertible holders were thinking, but there you go, Levine wrote. Maybe they were thinking, wow, Redditors really want to buy this stock. We'd better get some stock to sell them. GameStop's stock price was $19.95 on January 12th when Reddit's disruption-minded investors made their move. It closed at $193.60 on Thursday after eclipsing $400 that morning, the first major drop for the stock since the feeding frenzy began. GME at publication time is still $348. The company on Thursday issued its first public comments since its stock became front page news all over the world. GameStop's statement, however, concerned the 100 score it received from the Human Rights Campaign for its LGBTQ workplace equality practices. The company avoided talking about its stocks altogether, even though its market capitalization is, on paper of course, now $24.2 billion. Analysts are assuming that the hype for GameStop, AMC, and other stocks will cool off, as short sellers either give up or no longer forced into buying the stock to cover their losses, or U.S. regulators finally intervene. The Biden administration on Wednesday said Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and her economic advisors were monitoring the situation. The mobile trading app Robinhood on Thursday suspended or restricted trading in GameStop, AMC, and other stocks in response to the mania, a move that drew condemnation from lawmakers as desperate as Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Ted Cruz. There's a correction. The story has been updated to correct the timing on a statement from AMC and adds a quote from the AMC CEO that we already read. So yes, if you were worried about AMC, you can relax. Everything's fine. Moving on. Cori Bush is moving offices to get away from Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't know who Cori Bush is, but I think we all know who Marjorie Taylor Greene is, and I don't blame her. I guess that's Cori Bush. Representative Bush said she was moving for her team's safety, says Emma Ackerman on Vice.com on January 29th, 2021. Democratic Congresswoman Cori Bush is switching offices to get away from Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, saying the Georgia Republican berated her in a hallway while maskless earlier this month as a staffer yelled, "Stop inciting violence with Black Lives Matter." Uh, what I want to know is when they're doing this whole art, because things have certainly progressed from here throughout the week, and when the Democrats are doing their argument for why she should be ousted from the Republican Party, and the Republican Party is all like, well, you guys keep talking about things she did before she was elected. People shouldn't be blamed for things they did before they were elected. It's like, okay, so what about the fact that she's berating people in hallways while maskless? She's still denying that COVID is a thing and that masks are a thing. Is that not reason? Should that not be brought up, proving that she still believes the things that she believed? Because that is proof. That's what I want to know. That's what drives me freaking crazy. I'm sorry if something cut out there. No, I think it's fine. It's a zero drop frames. It's so nice. Good laptop. Where were we? It's just frustrating. On Friday, Bush said that Green, who has attached herself to several bizarre conspiracy theories, including QAnon, also shared false accusations on Twitter that made Bush a target. That, plus a hallway incident, Green's previous comments against Black Lives Matter, and her pre-election indications of support for violence against Democrats led Bush to announce her move. I'm moving my office away. I'm moving my office away from hers for my team's safety, Bush said in a Twitter post Friday. Bush, a progressive from Missouri, was leading a Black Lives Matter organizer during the protests in Ferguson that followed the police killing of Michael Brown in 2014. She made history when she won her election last year, becoming the first black woman to represent Missouri in Congress. Green responded to Bush's accusations Friday in a Twitter post of her own, saying Bush was the one who berated her and that she had receipts. A video that showed Green with her mask pushed below her chin while walking in a hallway. In the video, Bush yells off camera, "Follow the rules and put on a mask." A man can be heard making the Black Lives Matter comment about inciting violence. So the berating Green is talking about is Bush just asking her to put on her mask. It just goes back to what I was talking about. She's even denying freaking. She's the fucking Karen. Get her out of government. I'm not even gonna. That's enough, isn't it? Isn't that enough? It goes on to some of the other things she believes, but we know, and we will probably come across those again. Republicans condemned Trump. Now they're seeking his help. I'm curious to see about this. This is a story by Jill Colvin of the Associated Press. Republicans condemned Trump, now they're seeking his help. Just 2 weeks ago, House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy declared Donald Trump culpable in the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol. By Thursday, he was seeking his political support. A private meeting between the two men at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort signaled a remarkable turnaround in the former president's stature among elected Republicans. In the immediate aftermath of the insurrection Trump inspired, the idea that he would enjoy any sort of kingmaker role in his post-presidency seemed highly unlikely. But following an initial wave of condemnation, Republicans appear to be warming toward Trump, fully aware that his supporters are poised to punish anyone who displays disloyalty. With that in mind, party leaders are working to keep Trump in the fold as they focus on retaking the House and Senate in 2022. United and ready to win in 22, McCarthy tweeted after their meeting. Like, no wonder he didn't have Green removed from the party, because he's clearly one of them. The realignment with Trump comes as those who have crossed him continue to feel the burn. Trump ally Matt Gaetz, Republican of Florida, spent the day in Wyoming trying to take down Representative Liz Cheney, the number 3 House Republican who voted for Trump's impeachment. Amid the backlash, Senate Republicans largely made clear this week that they have no intention of convicting Trump. While Trump tries to exert influence, he's undeniably diminished. Before he incited his supporters to storm the Capitol, Trump was expected to spend his post-presidency gleefully settling scores with Republican rivals, launching a Twitter-fueled takedown of his successor, and mulling over running again for a second term. Now, he is largely isolated and silenced thanks by social media platforms as Joe Biden attempts to dismantle his agenda executive order by executive order. Thank God. He has not been seen in public since he disappeared behind the well-manicured hedges of Mar-a-Lago, last Wednesday. a half hour before his presidency ended. He has spent his days consulting with aides and defense lawyers as he prepares for his historic second impeachment trial. Things are very different now. Last time, Trump had an army of defenders that included a team of Washington lawyers, a presidential communications shop, a taxpayer funded White House counsel's office, and the steadfast backing of top Republicans, including the Republican National Committee. This time, Trump is still scrambling to pull together a legal team, with the trial less than 2 weeks out. I think he's at a significant disadvantage, said criminal defense attorney Alan Dershowitz, who was part of Trump's legal team in 2020, but is among the long list of lawyers sitting this one out. Yet even the impeachment trial, once seen as an opportunity for Senate Republicans to purge Trump from the party by barring him from ever running for office again, is now being used as a rallying cry to reunite the party against Democrats. Instead of debating whether he is guilty of willfully inciting violence against the government of the United States, Republicans have instead attacked the process, arguing that it is unconstitutional to try a president who has already left the White House. Somebody made a very interesting quote years ago because of one of these other trial-y thingamabobbers that do stuff. And the quote was something like, when a lawyer has a good case, he bangs on the fact, he pounds on the facts. When a lawyer has a bad case, he pounds on the table. Yeah, so like they're attacking the system because they don't have any actual evidence or facts to back up their case. At a time when our country needs to come together, Democrats in Congress are rehashing the same strategy that they employed for the last 4 years, politically motivated overreach that will only divide us further, Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel said in a statement that came after heated internal divisions over whether the group should publicly criticize Trump for inciting the riot. In an interview, McDaniel declined to criticize the 5 Republican senators who voted this week to move forward with the trial, but she said it's more important to look at the 45 that said this is ridiculous. Aside from the trial, Trump has gradually begun to return to the public conversation, firing off press releases from the political committee he created before leaving the White House. He's decompressing. He's got a legal team he's trying to organize, and he just needs to keep doing what he's doing, said Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, a close congressional ally who has been helping Trump stand up a legal team after numerous firms punted. I think there's an adjustment, said Matt Schlapp, chair of the American Conservative Union and another Trump ally. Jason Miller, an advisor to Trump, insisted that it was too early to discuss the president's impeachment strategy and the post-presidential political operation that is expected to include former White House political director Brian Jack and Trump's former campaign manager Bill Stepien. We've had discussions about where we want to get active with regard to the 2022 midterms and how we help Republicans win back the Senate and the House, Miller said. But Trump has yet to decide whether he will get involved in primary races to challenge Republicans who voted to impeach him. After those members faced intense backlash from Trump supporters, Senate Republicans voted overwhelmingly Tuesday for an attempt to dismiss his second impeachment trial. I think that's pretty clear that Republican voters are adamantly opposed to impeachment, and Republicans who vote for impeachment do so at their own peril, Miller said. This is horrifying. Despite the Capitol riot, polls show Trump remains deeply popular among Republican voters, many of whom now consider themselves more closely aligned with him than the party. It's not Trump so much they're trying to hug, it's Trump's base they're trying to hug, said Alex Conant, a Republican strategist. I think Trump's departure left a huge vacuum. He was the one thing that united Republicans more than anything. I mean, the Republican Party became the Trump Party for 4 years, and without him leading it, there's an obvious power vacuum, and I think you're seeing that play out now in Congress. The question is whether Trump's influence will endure. The internal divisions his team is fomenting could ultimately undermine the party's quest to retake Congress, and it's unclear whether he can transfer his personal popularity to other candidates when he's not on the ballot. Republicans lost control of the House in 2018 and gave up the Senate this month despite a last-minute appeal from Trump. Graham, who declared that just this month that he's done with Trump, all I can say is count me out, enough is enough, has since stressed the importance of keeping the party together, so even he changed his mind. And it's still with Trump. I want to make sure that the Republican Party can grow and come back, and we're going to need Trump, and Trump needs us. Like, they're all a bunch of spineless fucking worms. And the fact that they go around accusing Democrats of exactly what they are is just so frustrating. And the fact that people believe them is even more frustrating. As for Republicans who vote to convict Trump, I guess it depends on what state you're in and what phase in your career you are in. Everybody keeps, like, this. Remember when we read about how, have we done that yet? Liz Cheney was kept in the party, thank God. But when there was a vote for Marjorie Taylor Greene to be ejected from the party, they also voted to eject Liz Cheney from the party. Who is Liz Cheney? She's someone who voted for Trump to be. She voted for the impeachment or whatever. I can't remember exactly. Or I can't. Well, I guess I'm sure we will get there. I'm sure we will get there. Let's keep going. Moving on, Vancouver police issue $17,000 in fines to partying goers man running home nightclub, says the Canadian press. So this isn't the Associated Press, this is the Canadian press, totally different. In Vancouver, police have arrested a man who allegedly operated a makeshift nightclub at his Vancouver penthouse and issued fines against him and his suspected guests totaling more than $17,000. Sergeant Steve Addison says the case should be a lesson to anyone caught hosting a party in violation of provincial measures imposed during the COVID-19 pandemic. He says police launched an investigation a week ago after a witness called police to report a large party inside the downtown apartment. Addison says officers issued numerous fines to a 42-year-old host who was allegedly working as a doorman but refused to open the door and was defiant with police. Officers returned early Sunday morning with a search warrant after he allegedly held two more large parties this weekend. Addison says the 102 square meter penthouse was packed with people and appeared to be running as a nightclub and show lounge. Our officers found 78 people inside the three-level apartment and none of them were wearing masks, he said. There were menus, tables, point-of-sale terminals, and cash tills. This is insane. Police issued partygoers a $230 ticket for failing to wear a face covering and arrested the host. Provincial measures ban social gatherings of any size inside residences, but allow people who live alone to host two people with whom they regularly socialize, which that didn't sound anything like that. That just, again, I feel like that goes back to how rich people live in a totally different world. Because what the fuck? And I'm sure those people will have no problems with that $230 fine that will be pocket change to them. Moving on from there, what we know so far about the coup in Myanmar. Because that happened this week, and that was crazy. How many stories about Myanmar do we got here? That one's fine. All right, yeah. All right, I don't think I'll be repeating myself too much here. So, Aung San Suu Kyi and top allies were detained in early morning raids and a state of emergency was declared, says Joe Friedman of Vice.com on January 31st, 2021. If you hear that banging, you probably don't because, I mean, you can't even hear me snapping, so. But that's on my end. The person knocking down the wall upstairs is on my end. Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi and her closest allies were detained early Monday morning in what is now clearly a military coup. A state of emergency has also been declared for a year, and the military has installed a former general as temporary president, arguing that questions over alleged election irregularities remain unresolved. The military said new elections would be held. The events have shocked a country just emerging from decades of military rule, but where the armed forces remain extremely powerful. Here's what we know so far about the dramatic events unfolding in the Southeast Asian country. First question, who has been detained? Aung San Suu Kyi, her close ally President Win Myint, and other members of her party, the National League of Democracy, were detained in early Monday raids in the sprawling capital just hours before the opening of parliament following elections in November. NLD spokesperson Myo Nyunt told Reuters that his colleagues had been taken and that he expected to be arrested. I want to tell our people not to respond rashly, and I want them to act according to the law, he was quoted as saying. He also described what was happening as a coup in a separate interview with AFP. I don't know what AFP stands for. Sorry. Hours later, military-owned television announced a year-long state of emergency, installing former General and current Vice President Myint Sui as president and deferring power to Commander-in-Chief Min Aung Hlaing. Internet connections in parts of the country were also not functioning normally. Vice World News found it difficult to reach contributors in Yangon or Naypyidaw Monday morning. Soldiers and military vehicles were seen in different cities, as well as a heavy security presence in key areas. We can't go out because of the security around us, a senior Myanmar official based in the capital told Vice World News. We don't have any information. Sorry. Water break. Prominent Myanmar activists said the list of those detained was not limited to senior leaders. We woke up this morning to the coup. Everything has just started. I'm fine, but friends I know have been arrested, including prominent politicians. It's very worrying, youth activist Tenzar Shunal Yi told Vice World News. Phone lines and some television station channels are also down. We aren't sure what will come next. Rohingya activist Wei Wei Nu also tweeted that some student and ethnic party leaders had been detained, though information was difficult to verify in the fast-moving developments. What does this mean? It is devastating for Myanmar, which had been ruled by a military junta from 1962 until 2010 when a quasi-civilian government took over, supposedly paving the way for democratic and economic reforms. Aung San Suu Kyi won elections in a landslide in 2015, cementing some of those promises and hailing the start of a new democratic era, but the military still controlled 25% of seats in parliament because of the constitution it had drafted in 2008. Though Suu Kyi stood by the military when they were accused of committing genocide against Rohingya Muslims in 2017, tensions between the two sides remained high over the role of the army in politics. It makes me wonder now. It really does make me wonder now if when Aung San Suu Kyi said that stuff about in 2017, I remember this happening as if it was yesterday, where people were asking her about the genocide against Rohingya Muslims, and she was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see any genocide." And they were like, "We have footage. We're literally, it's in front of your face. We're showing you this footage of people being murdered. Like, do you not see this footage we are showing you right here?" And she's like, "I don't see anything." It's like now it makes me wonder: did she have a gun to her head the whole time? Like, did she know that speaking out against the military would just lead to an instant coup? Have the military been like right on the verge of snapping this whole frickin' time? This is insane. This is unimaginable in its monstrosity. Um, I can't imagine what it would be like living in a place like Myanmar. I can't imagine what it would be like living in a place where the military is separate from the government and feels itself as its own institution with its own opinions. It's insane that I'm sure we'll get to what I was about to say. Let's just keep going. The NLD has consistently made clear it wants to amend the Constitution, make changes, and the military has consistently refused to budge, claiming it is an essential part of security in a country awash with ethnic armed groups, a fraught peace process, and clashes with insurgents. So the military says that it will not give up power because it is necessary. And that's why they hold on to 25% of the government and why they believe that they can just walk in and take the country anytime they feel like. Okay. I feel like the 25% of parliament that's made up of military should have had to reject, like, leave, give up their military links and ranks and connections upon entering the government. That would have just made sense. Is that among the things they refused to do? Was that even brought up? Anyway, they still control three key ministries responsible for defense, immigration, and home affairs. It is still unclear why the military has gone this far, given how unpopular development will be in a country with many raw memories about the dark days of dictatorship. Myanmar historian and writer Thant Myint Yu tweeted that he has a sinking feeling that no one will be able to control what comes next. The tweet reads as follows. The doors just open to a very different future. I have a sinking feeling that no one will really be able to control what comes next. And remember, Myanmar is a country awash in weapons, with deep divisions across ethnic and religious lines where millions can barely feed themselves. Oh my god. The United States and other governments condemn the power grab. A White House spokesperson said in a statement that it opposes any attempt to alter the outcome of recent elections or impede Myanmar's democratic transition and will take action against those responsible if these steps are not reversed. That I would like to see. We continue to affirm our strong support for Burma's democratic institutions and, in coordination with our regional partners, urge the military and all other parties to adhere to democratic norms and the rule of law and to release those detained today. The U.S. still refers to the country officially as Burma, which was its name until a military-backed government changed it to Myanmar in 1989. But in this statement, it used them interchangeably, creating some confusion online. Okay. Charles Santiago from the ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights said in a statement that the developments are shocking and a slap in the face to every Myanmar citizen who went out to vote in November's elections. The military must immediately and unconditionally release any of those arrested as part of the early morning roundup, send their tanks back to the barracks, and restore communication services. Can you imagine? They're just like, you know what? That's a good idea. We made a mistake. We shouldn't have done this. Here's your leaders back. Let's pretend this never happened. That would be interesting to see. And absolutely should would be insane. Why is this happening now? It's related to the most recent election in November. The detentions happened hours before Myanmar lawmakers were due to take their seats in the opening of parliament. The first since Suu Kyi and her party won elections in a repeat landslide last year. But unfounded allegations quickly emerged of widespread voter fraud and other claims by the military-backed Union Solidarity and Development Party, which received only a few dozen seats out of hundreds of available positions. This does not count the 25% of seats handed over to military MPs. Unless this problem is resolved, it will obstruct the path to democracy and it must therefore be resolved according to law, the military said in a televised statement. Therefore, the state of emergency is declared in accordance with Article 417 of the 2008 Constitution. So basically, they're pulling a Trump. They're saying we couldn't possibly have lost us by how much that we lost. It must be election fraud, even though there's no evidence. So we're just going to, unlike Trump, who didn't have this power, we are going to take over the country. The article, which comes from a charter drafted by the armed forces, gives the commander in chief power to take over if there arises a situation that threatens the disintegration of the Union. Rumors of a coup swirled in recent days when the powerful Myanmar military chief Min Aung Hlaing weighed in on the dispute. Military vehicles were seen on the street of the commercial capital Yangon, and security was beefed up around the capital Naypyidaw, where the parliament is located. The United Nations, Western governments, and Myanmar's Buddhist leadership all released statements condemning the possibility of a power grab, and Min Aung Hlaing appeared to back off, saying his words had been taken out of context. Well, that was a lie. But the armed forces, known as the Tatmadaw in Myanmar, released another statement on Sunday that stirred more fears, saying the foreign diplomatic missions should not be endorsing the election results without understanding actual events. Jesus. So that's fun. That is a really fucked up, shitty situation. I'm very concerned, just mainly by the continuing failing of democracy around the world. That just is a sign of the continuing failing times that we're going through right now. Moving on from there, cops pepper sprayed a 9-year-old girl and told her she was acting like a child. This too is a fun story. Not. By Paul Bless on Vice.com on February. Is that February 1st? I guess. I mean, how can you tell? Looks like January 2nd. Cops handcuffed a 9-year-old girl, forced her into a patrol car as she screamed for her father and pepper sprayed her. The incident was captured on body cam footage released Sunday in Rochester, New York. Throughout the video, the girl yells, "I want my dad." No, I'm not gonna. Don't want to mock her. It happened around 3:30 p.m. on January 29th after police responded to a report of family trouble, the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle reported. Video from the police body cam begins with an officer chasing the girl as she runs down the street. Why are multiple police, because I believe at some point they're going to point out that there's 9. All I want to know is why are there 9 police officers showing up to deal with a 9-year-old kid? Or maybe I got 9 from her. Anyway, we'll figure out how many officers very soon. They're running around. Eventually he catches up with her, detains her, and asks, "What is going on? How can I help?" Why don't you ask, "How can I help?" without climbing on top of her first? Eventually her mother appears in the video and the mother and daughter begin arguing. 2 officers restrain the girl as she screams for her father, which is like, what's up with her father? I was right, 9 officers. What's up with her father? Like, it sounds like there's more of the story than we're getting. Like maybe her parents divorced or something? Maybe what if her mother's abusive, right? Like what if her mother's abusive and she's screaming for her father because like she wants to be safe from the abuse, and then what? And then they're showing up and they're, I don't know, like who knows what the story is? It's probably not that. It's probably not that. All right, don't sue me for defamation. mother of this child. It's probably not that. But like, what is she calling for her father for? I would love to know a few more details of the story, and we're not going to get them. More police cars keep showing up, with a total of 9 officers and Rochester police supervisors eventually responding, according to the Democrat and Chronicle. A second body, because I mean, they make her seem like she's crazy or like she's hysterical, but like, what's the story behind this? Like, she could have a very good reason for being hysterical. Maybe her father's dead. Like, I would like to know what's up with all of that. But a second body cam video shows the cops handcuffing the girl on the ground in the snow as she struggles and continues to call out for her dad, begging the cops to stop and telling them that they're hurting her. At one point, an officer tells her that she's acting like a child, to which the 9-year-old girl responds, I am a child. Now, I've seen the video footage, and I will admit she does seem pretty big for a 9-year-old girl. She's probably had a freakish height growth spurt or whatever, because she does look somewhat. I could somewhat imagine the scenario where police would look at her and be like, well, she's clearly older than 9 years old. But I mean, again, that's the problem, isn't it? That police see children when they are children of color as being adults, whereas if it was a white child, they would probably not be treating the person this way. So when they called her a child, she responded. The 9-year-old girl responds that I am a child on video. After police put her in the back of a car, the girl continues to struggle in the back seat and keeps her legs out to prevent them from closing the door. That's when an officer tells her, this is your last chance, or else pepper spray is going in your eyeballs. Moments later, the girl says, you said you were going to pepper spray me. No, please, no, stop. Just spray her at this point, the cop wearing the body camera tells the cop trying to force the door shut. The officer wearing the camera then pepper sprays the girl and tells the other officer, I got her. They then shut the door. The girl was transported to the hospital and later released to her family after receiving treatment, according to the Democrat and Chronicle. At a Sunday press conference, Rochester officials criticized the way police dealt with the child in crisis. I'm very concerned about how this young girl was handled by our police department, said Rochester Mayor Lovely Warren. She added that she has directed interim police chief Cynthia Harriott Sullivan to conduct a complete and thorough and transparent investigation to this incident, and said she welcomes a review by the Rochester Police Accountability Board. Free the People Rochester, a local activist group that advocates for defunding the police, called for the firing of police involved in the incident. The RPD's Rochester Police Department usage of pepper spray on a young child who is already handcuffed and experiencing a mental health crisis is an extremely violent and inhuman act. The group said in a statement, the officers involved are a danger to our community and must be fired and charged immediately. Mike Mazzio, president of the Rochester Locust Club, the local police union, defended the cops' conduct. He said the officer who pepper sprayed the girl made a decision there that he thought was the best action to take. And the tweet says, he made a decision there that he thought was the best action to take. It resulted in no injury to her. I think the idea is that because she was trying to keep the door open, they were worried that they might, say, break her leg or something and trying to close the door on her, which I don't know why they are shoving a 9-year-old girl into the back of their car in the first place. I don't even know what she did wrong, right? Like, let's go back to the fact, are they arresting her for running down the street like a crazy person? Is that against the law now to run down the street hysterically screaming? Is that against the law? When? For what? Disturbing the peace? Is that something you arrest people for and stole them in the back of a cruiser? Like, what the fuck is going on? This is the reason why I keep talking about. I wish I had more details. This is because like, what's the line from Star Trek Discovery? Orders are for soldiers, context is for kings. Nuance is everything, in my opinion. And that's something where, like, if the police were focused on the nuance and the context of the situation instead of just reacting to what to a girl acting hysterically, then perhaps they could have responded better. And I think that's what people are asking for when they ask for defund the police, because they're not asking for, we don't want police anymore. They're asking, why don't we take some of the money that we're putting into paying all these police officers, who 9 of them show up to this to stop a 9-year-old girl. So clearly that was too much. Like, why don't the money that went into paying those police officers could have gone into paying a more socially oriented association that would be focused on that which maybe they would be called, like maybe you call the police a disturbance. It's with a girl. She's acting hysterical. Okay, they move on and contact the social psychological group, and then they send someone out to come out and talk through the issue and try to see if they can solve the problem without violence. And then they will ask the questions such as like, what's up with your father, where is her father, is like what's going on here, as opposed to let me solve this problem with handcuffs and throwing them in the back of a car. And if it gets violent, if things escalate, then that person can always then call the cops or refer to the cops. But having other institutions that aren't necessarily going to put um, uh, violence first are not going to respond necessarily as treat everything as a crime and everyone as criminals could be a really good idea. That's all I believe a lot of people who support defund police are trying to say. But Harriet Sullivan, who was appointed as interim chief after fallout last year from the police killing of 41-year-old Daniel Prude, who was having a mental health crisis, criticized officers' actions and said the department needs to do better. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that for a 9-year-old to have to be pepper sprayed is okay. Harriet Sullivan said on Sunday, I don't see that as who we are as a department, and we're going to do the work we have to do to ensure that these kinds of things don't happen. Yeah, well, you better. Moving on from there, there's still so much more. House Democrats mount effort to punish Georgia Representative Green. At least this one will be fun. This is a story on February 1st by Brian Slodisco of the Associated Press out of Washington. House Democrats are mounting an effort to formally rebuke Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, a newly elected Georgia Republican with a history of making racist remarks, embracing conspiracy theories, and endorsing violence directed at Democrats. Democrats have teed up action Wednesday to send a resolution to the House floor that would strip Greene of assignments on the House Education and Budget Committees if House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy doesn't do so first. It is my hope and expectation that Republicans will do the right thing and hold Representative Greene accountable. Well, they won't. And we will not need to consider this resolution. Well, you will. But we are prepared to do so if necessary, and you do. Some Democrats have called for going further and expelling Greene from the House, an unlikely outcome that would require backing from Republicans. God, I wish they would, since expulsion requires a 2/3 vote. Another option is censure. Democrats' willingness to act against a member of the opposing party underscores their desire to confront far-right politicians like Greene, who are closely aligned with some of former President Donald Trump's fringe supporters, including extremist groups that were involved in the violent Capitol insurrection. It also shines a light on the GOP's reluctance to punish Trump supporters in their ranks for fear of alienating some of the former president's former ardent voters. Sorry, I'm just sitting cross-legged. Now, if Republicans won't police their own, the House must step in, said Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is sponsoring the measure to remove Greene from the committees. In a tweet over the weekend, Greene sounded a defiant tone. She also said she had spoken to Trump and was grateful for his support. He will never back down and will stand up against the never-ending. I will never back down and will stand up against never-ending bloodthirsty mob, she tweeted. On Monday, she tweeted that Democrats, if they move forward, will come to regret the precedent they are setting, arguing that it would be used extensively against members on their side once we regain the majority after the 2022 elections. Number one, good luck for getting the majority with your insanity. Number two, good luck proving it. I mean, if we can't even prove this, then what the fuck? Like, what the fuck are you gonna be removing Democrats for? For being liberals? So for eating babies? Is that it? Is that what we're talking about here? Is that what she's trying to imply? Like, seriously. Greene's views were in the spotlight even before she joined the White House last month. The Georgia Republican has expressed support for QAnon conspiracy theories, which focus on the debunked belief that top Democrats are involved in child sex trafficking, Satan worship, and cannibalism. Facebook videos surfaced last year showing showing that she'd expressed racist, anti-Semitic, and anti-Muslim views. Top Republicans announced her at the time, hoping to block her from capturing the GOP nomination in her reliably red congressional district in northwest Georgia. But after she won her primary, they largely accepted her. It's insane how these people are such spineless fucking worms, and it's driving me crazy. I hate conservatives so much. Not because I'm a sheep or because of I'm convinced by the media or whatever. It's because of the shit they do. Like this isn't telling me to hate Republicans. It's just telling me what they're doing, and what they're doing is bullshit. Like coming out and saying, we denounce this person. Oh, she's supported by all these crazy people. Well, we need those numbers, so I guess we like her now. In recent years, she liked Facebook posts that advocated violence against Democrats and the FBI. One suggested shooting House Speaker Nancy Pelosi in the head. In response to a post raising the prospect of hanging former President Barack Obama, Green responded that the stage is being set. This is the person who's working in government right now. In an updated, in an okay, in an undated video posted online, Green floated a conspiracy theory that falsely suggests that the 2017 mass shootings that killed 58 people at a country music festival in Las Vegas could have been a false flag operation to build support for gun control legislation. And I remember when that happened, that was a horrific moment too. Didn't she also suggest that it was a liberal that did it? I've seen remember something about like, obviously they know only Republicans would be at that Las Vegas event. It's like, what are you talking about? She also liked a Facebook post that challenged the veracity of a 2012 mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. Another video captured her confronting Parkland school shooting survivor David Hogg, and that video is hard to watch. It honestly is. She's like chasing this dude down, being like, you know that the shooting you're in was fake, right? You know that you're just a liar and you're faking about the fact that you survived this horrible school shooting where you lost your friends. Like, what the fuck? And then she became a fucking representative in government. The US is fucked. After her election, she seized on Trump's false claims that the election was stolen and cheered on his supporters the day before the Capitol was stormed. It's our 1776 moment, she posted on the conservative-friendly social media platform Parler. Last week, Pelosi pressed for House Republicans to take action against Green, assigning her to the Education Committee when she has mocked the killing of little children in Newtown. What could they be thinking? Or is thinking too generous a word for what they might be doing? Pelosi said of Republican leaders, it's absolutely appalling, right? McCarthy is supposed to meet privately with Green this week. A spokesperson for the Republican leader declined to comment on Monday. Although it's not certain he will take action against Green, McCarthy has punished members of the House Republican caucus before. Former Representative Steve King, representative of Iowa, was stripped of all his committee assignments after expressing support for white supremacists in 2019. But her support for white supremacists is okay. Wasserman Schultz acknowledged Monday that it had long been left up to leaders to remove members of Congress of their own party of their committee assignments, but she said Republicans reluctant to take action left Democrats with little choice. Representative Green's appalling behavior both before her election and during her term has helped fuel domestic terrorism, endangered lives of her colleagues, and brought shame on the entire House of Representatives. Based on her actions and statements and her belligerent refusal to disavow them, she should not be permitted to participate in the important work of these two influential committees. Truth. Moving on to a great story that's not great. Horrible. I was being sarcastic, just for the record, because here we go. Evan Rachel Wood accuses ex-fiancé Marilyn Manson of abuse. Evan Rachel Wood, pictured here, who has previously spoken openly about her experience with abuse, states that Marilyn Manson is the abuser she has referred to. This is a story on ScreenRant.com by Graham Wootman. Evan Rachel Wood has come forward with allegations of abuse against ex-fiancé Marilyn Manson. Wood and Manson began dating when the actress was 18 and he was 36. The relationship became public in 2007 and the couple became engaged in 2010. Manson and Wood's engagement ended several months later in the same year. Beginning in 2016, the Westworld actress began speaking out about her experiences with sexual assault and abuse, some at the hands of an unnamed partner. She told Rolling Stone that she had been assaulted in the past, once by a significant other and another time by a bar owner. Wood has testified in front of both Congress and California legislature in support of survivors of abuse in the hopes of passing various laws that advocate for victims' rights. Wood also helped write one of the bills, California's Phoenix Act, which required police to have more training when it comes to dealing with domestic violence cases. Now, Wood has come forward and named her abuser as rock musician Marilyn Manson. Wood touches on the years of abuse she suffered at the hands of Manson in her post, saying that she no longer wants to live in fear of retaliation. She finishes the post by saying that she will continue to be an advocate for victims everywhere. Wood also expresses a desire to call out the industries that have continued to enable Manson over the years. In a show of solidarity, several more women have come forward with allegations of abuse against Manson, according to THR. Here is Wood's statement in full. The name of my abuser is Brian Warner, also known to the world as Marilyn Manson. He started grooming me when I was a teenager and horrifically abused me for years. I was brainwashed and manipulated into submission. I am done living in fear of retaliation, slander, or blackmail. I am here to expose this dangerous man and call out the many industries that have enabled him before he ruins any more lives. I will stand with many victims who will no longer be silent. I wonder if some of this explains why Westworld means so much to her. Because you would think that because she has to face, and her character in that show has to face these horrific moments of rape, of assault, of men having power over her, and then throughout the show she overcomes that and becomes the most powerful force in the show. And I wonder if, in some sense, because of her history of this, that she feels empowered by that show. And if that's true, I say go girl, and I love it, and I love that she's made herself the face like that, and that she's embraced and embraced that power so strongly. Manson has long been a shocking figure and has utilized violence in his work to garner attention. The singer also has a documented history of allegations of violence and abuse, both prior to his relationship with Wood and after. Coming forward with allegations of abuse is a daunting experience for any survivor, but Wood has been steadfast in both her openness about her experiences and her advocacy for necessary changes that both the industry and the world at large must make to create a more equitable world for survivors to come forward. The rise of the Time's Up and Me Too movement, spurred by the allegations against Harvey Weinstein, has brought these conversations to the front of an industry that has long been plagued by abusive dynamics that allow men in power to take advantage of women. Still, even with all the support, it is no easy feat to come forward and name your abuser. Wood makes that clear in her statement when she hints at the potential retaliation that comes from accusing a high profile figure like Manson. Manson has consistently denied any allegations brought forth against him, and Wood herself refused to name her abuser for a long time, but it seems her continued advocacy for victims has inspired other women to come forward in support of her and survivors everywhere. Yeah, a lot of people have come forward saying almost the exact same story, to the point where deniers and assholes were being like, obviously they all synced up their stories because they all sound so similar. And it's like, no, it's because he has a pattern of abuse that continues. Like, nothing. We're moving on. Not just Myanmar. Southeast Asia is coming under more authoritarian rule. This is a story by Heather Chen from Vice.com on February 2nd. Or February 2nd. I don't know. Is it February 2nd or is it February 2nd? I don't know. 2021. It seemed like history was repeating itself in Myanmar on Monday when the country was plunged back into military rule as security forces arrested de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi along with the president and her closest political allies. The military moved swiftly and seized power, handing authority over to Army Chief Min Aung Hlaing and declaring a national state of emergency for a year. February 1st coup follows a landslide victory in November for Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy Party, NLD, and derailed years of Western-backed efforts to establish democracy in the country. The move was expected, but still came as a big surprise to many who were confident that the NLD had a clear electoral mandate, said Roger Huang, a Sydney-based politics lecturer at the Macquarie University, who noted that the military clearly used the downtime as a result of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic as an opportunity to take back control of the country. Many Southeast Asian governments have been using COVID-19 as a distraction to seize power and exert their authority, and ironically, as the pandemic worsens in many countries, authoritarian regimes and powers only become more emboldened in using emergency powers and public health measures to justify crackdowns on free speech, Wang said. Responses from Southeast Asian governments towards the situation in Myanmar were muted. A telling sign, according to rights groups and experts. They offered similar views about the trend they played out in a region where democracy has been on the back foot for years, autocratic governments cementing their grip on power as the virus swept across borders. The COVID-19 pandemic was a human rights disaster for Southeast Asia and opened the door for authoritarian governments to further crack down on their people, said Phil Robertson, Asia Deputy Director of Human Rights Watch, HRW. Besides Myanmar, here are other examples of authoritarian developments playing out in Southeast Asia during the pandemic. In Thailand, even as the pandemic hit Thailand, thousands upon thousands of pro-democracy youth protesters still took to the streets in Bangkok to stage historic demonstrations against the government and the kingdom's all-powerful monarchy. The events were part of a long year that kept the authorities on their toes and changed the country forever. A state of emergency was declared in March to combat the rapid spread of the virus. Citing the violations of emergency regulations, police and authorities denied permissions to protesters to hold peaceful assemblies, carried out sweeping crackdowns, and initiated criminal proceedings against demonstrators. But even as infection rates dropped and life returned to normal, critics questioned the use of laws to curb protests and target prominent government critics like Thai opposition figure Thanathorn Wangguan-Kit, who was accused of violating you try pronouncing that better. Who was accused of violating the dreaded royal defamation law when he questioned the government's vaccination strategy. Measures ostensibly aimed at protecting the Thai people from a public health threat were used to harass and obstruct peaceful protesters calling for justice and accountability. Freedom of Expression Group Article 19 noted, the Thai government has referred to the military coup in Myanmar as an eternal affair. Meanwhile, in Cambodia managed to contain the virus and has not recorded one single official COVID-19 death. That's impressive. But rights groups, government critics, and exiled politicians have accused the country's controversial strongman leader Hun Sen of using the pandemic to his advantage and as a pretext for expanding his power. Hun Sen clearly took advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic to wipe out opposition and grow his totalitarian rule, said Mu Shoshua, a prominent Cambodian opposition leader who recently faced serious charges of treason and had planned a high-profile return to the United States, where she is currently based. I was willing to take that dangerous risk of traveling home during the pandemic because I would be going to jail for the... What? Okay. Yeah, I was willing to take that dangerous risk of traveling home during the pandemic because I would be going to jail for the sake of national dialogue, Soshua previously told Vice World News, but she never made it because of heavy restrictions in place. I mean, thank God. Mass treason trials, I wouldn't never give myself to prison. That just sounds like a nightmare. And honestly, I cannot imagine. I mean, you hear. I think we're gonna get to something that's gonna be even more fucked. But I would never. Prison is like my fear. It's like my nightmare. Mass treason trials were also held for many other opposition members in exile. Experts have also noted that U.S. sanctions no longer pose a serious threat to countries facing. Because I mean, when you're in prison, all your rights are gone. Your ability to do anything is gone. Your ability to make an impact is gone. Like, as long as you're free, you still have power. If you go into prison, you lose that power. It's just insane to me. But anyway, it sucks. Malaysia. Let's move on to Malaysia. Malaysia's government was quick to weigh in on the coup in Myanmar, urging peaceful dialogue and calling for the resolution of disputes through legal processes. But their statements raised eyebrows among many Malaysians who called out double standards and hypocrisy displayed by its own backdoor government. In 2020, Malaysia witnessed its own political crisis unfold. Its democratically elected coalition government collapsed, and the old ruling party was back in power. Months of political infighting and chaos ensued as the pandemic worsened, leading the Malaysian king to finally declare a state of emergency after seeing daily coronavirus infections skyrocket into the thousands. The irony in this, wrote one Malaysian on Twitter, the military in Myanmar staged a coup to take power. This government in Malaysia took away voting rights and replaced a democratically elected coalition without the people's consent. What's the difference between Myanmar and us? While a civilian government is in place, parliament and state assemblies remain suspended. Observers noted that the state of emergency not only provides Malaysian military with political powers, it also grants political immunity to Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin, prohibiting elections and allowing him to avoid challenges to his leadership. The emergency in Malaysia was called using COVID-19 cover and tested the government in an unprecedented fashion, said political analyst Bridget Welsh, a Malaysia expert research associate at the University of Nottingham. There's no government accountability but greater scrutiny and expectations from the Malaysian public with less than adequate results. Meanwhile, in Vietnam's response to coronavirus is widely viewed as among the most effective in the world. It's amazing how these guys are really good at stopping coronavirus, but really bad at human rights. Recording just 1,739 cases and 35 deaths. But human rights activists point out that its success at curbing the pandemic was built on repression. The steps to prevention and containment are easy to describe but difficult to implement, Matthew Moore, a Hanoi-based official from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, told Reuters. But the Communist Party of Vietnam has been very successful in implementing them over and over again. With the latest security tools at its disposal, the Vietnamese Communist Party's controversial public surveillance strategies served it well when it came to fast responses and wide contact tracing efforts. Ironically, the structures used by government officials to control dissent were the same ones used to control the epidemic. The military also played a significant role in the fight against the virus. Moving on to the Philippines. Like Thailand and Malaysia, officials in the Philippines did not strongly condemn the coup in Myanmar, but offered concern about the safety of Aung San Suu Kyi, who remained under house arrest as of Tuesday afternoon. But the country, also Asia's oldest democracy, has seen more than its fair share of power grabs and human rights abuses which took place during the COVID-19 pandemic. Local politicians were empowered to implement harsh coronavirus rules while lawmakers were able to pass controversial bills, like the dreaded anti-terror law, in record time as Filipinos were focusing on surviving. The law, which critics fear would be used to target journalists, activists, and dissidents in a country with a notoriously poor record on human rights, now expands the scope for warrantless arrests and grants strongman President Rodrigo Duterte and his ruling government the power to brand anyone a terrorist or enemy of the state. Many in the country were also enraged that the government prioritized passing anti-terror laws over coronavirus aid. Legislation took effect on July 18, 2020, and at least 2 persons have been charged since. In March, Duterte declared a national health emergency and ordered a national lockdown covering half the population to curb the coronavirus spread in the country. He called upon the Philippine Congress to grant him special powers to distribute stimulus packages for families and obtain medical aid from abroad. But he also deployed police officers across the country to uphold highly controversial coronavirus rules and restrictions that subjected young people to alarming abuse. Like what? Philippine children face abuse for violating COVID-19 curfew. This is a story by Margaret Worth and Carlos H. Cond on hrw.org, or what that website is. Philippine authorities have subjected children to absurdly abusive treatment for violating curfew and quarantine rules imposed to limit exposure to COVID-19. Police and local officials in several parts of the country have mistreated people detained for violating COVID-19 regulations, including by confining them to dog cages and forcing them to sit for hours in the midday sun. Reports shared with Human Rights Watch by child rights groups in Manila show that children are among those facing cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment for violating pandemic emergency measures. In Cavite province, 2 children were locked in a coffin on March 26th as punishment for violating curfew. On March 20th, officials in Santa Cruz Town, Laguna province, locked 5 young people inside a dog cage. In Binondo, Manila, village officials arrested 4 boys and 4 girls on March 19th for violating curfew. They forcibly cut the hair of seven of the children, while the one who resisted was stripped naked and ordered to walk home. That's fucked. Even when adults are arrested, it can create risks for children. As of March 30th, the authorities have arrested more than 17,000 people for violations of COVID-19 emergency measures, according to Rappler. In some cases, children's caregivers have been arrested for violating COVID-19 regulations. In Tacloban City, a mother was arrested on March 24th for allowing her children to play outdoors. Things could get worse. On Wednesday, President Rodrigo Duterte, whose murderous war on drugs has killed thousands of people since 2016, said that his orders to the police and military during the pandemic were, if there is trouble, shoot them dead. Jesus Christ. That was a story from, by the way, let me see if I can find the date. Where did they hide the date for these things? Really? April 3rd, 2020. So a while ago. Wow, that's a fun story. Moving back to the story on Vice.com, Duterte also resorted to similar inflammatory proclamations used during the deadly drug war, ordering police. Basically, that last article, for those who are not watching the video, I followed a rabbit hole to figure out what they were talking about. Anyway, moving back on with the original article, Duterte also resorted to similar inflammatory proclamations used during the deadly drug war, ordering police and security personnel to shoot dead anyone caught violating lockdown orders. Political analyst and newspaper columnist Antonio J. Montalvan II, from Duterte's political stronghold of Mindanao, criticized his administration's response to the health emergency in the Philippines, saying that he had clearly used the opportunity presented by the epidemic to expand his powers without offering a clear epidemiological response. Duterte successfully created de facto martial law without the declaration, but cleverly containing the pandemic with a military solution, Montalvan told Al Jazeera. The threats of arrests are still continuing in the Philippines, with police warnings being issued against mass gatherings and protests because of pandemic restrictions. I read all that article and the rabbit hole that led from that, because I felt like it was a very interesting story into things we don't often hear a lot about. Um, a lot of the reason why I'm doing this news thing is that I figure that a lot of people who are into like the geeky things of life, um, like I am, and are into video games and TV and being a geek, they probably don't pay a lot of attention to the news, and they probably think it's dumb and boring. I remember I used to think it was boring when I was younger or whatever. But I think the news is important, and so in a way, this is me trying to get the news out to an audience of people who normally wouldn't give a shit about the news. And to that audience, I feel like that article was very important to telling us about countries that and the state of countries that we might not know a lot about. So I really appreciate that article. And moving on from there. QAnon is jealous of Myanmar's military coup. This is Vice.com by David Gilbert, who says this on February 2nd, 2021. As the details of a military coup in Myanmar were still emerging on Monday morning, QAnon World was going into overdrive, linking the military takeover to its long-held belief that former President Donald Trump would lead a similar takeover in the U.S. For QAnon supporters, the similarities were uncanny. A November election, claims of widespread fraud against the Conservative Party, and the court siding with the liberals. So when the military moved in, as QAnon supporters have been promised would happen in the U.S. for years, it was too much to ignore. Almost instantly, QAnon believers drew American elites into the conspiracy theory, posting photos of Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi shaking hands with former President Barack Obama, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and Jewish billionaire philanthropist George Soros. Also parodies the general boogeyman from most conspiracy theories. 2018 report about child trafficking in Myanmar was also boosted as somehow more evidence that this was all part of the plan. One major QAnon account dredged up an old tweet from the voting machine company Smartmatic, kicking off more conspiracies about it and Dominion voting systems being involved in election fraud, just as they had been accused during the U.S. election, again without any evidence. Failed Republican candidate Angela Stanton King, who has voiced support for QAnon in the past, asked why something similar wasn't happening in America. Wow. Jordan Sather, who is one of the biggest influencers in the QAnon movement, flagged on his Telegram account comments from former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo suggesting that they showed the coup in Myanmar was all part of the plan and that something similar was going to happen in the US. His tweet or whatever has a bunch of pictures of what they were talking about with Obama and Hillary Clinton shaking hands with Aung Suu Kyi. And then there's Mike Pompeo, and below it says, fascinating, Mike Pompeo on November 9th. We are monitoring Myanmar elections very closely. He's talking about democracy there, but the QAnon people think, oh, are they monitoring them because they're saying we could do that here too? Myanmar moves today against what looks like a globalist puppet who had help rigging their elections. Will this happen in other countries? Is the US soon? I know many will cry, why didn't our military do it before inauguration? As much as I wanted that too, there are sound arguments supporting the choice to let Biden have it for a moment and get DJT, Donald J. Trump, out of the picture. Out of the picture temporarily. So it was all done to protect Donald Trump, of course, because you wouldn't want him to get hurt when all the liberals go violent and start smoking pot and eating babies. A poster on one of the most popular QAnon message boards even posted a version of a viral video of Myanmar woman King Hinin Y dancing to Ampen Man. I wish is this video? No, it's not a video. I wish that was a video. I would love to be able to play that. The QAnon version actually features a dancing Donald Trump. It's funny because I think Donald Trump is a good dancer, I guess. That we're not laughing at him when he dances like that. TFW, over on Patriots.win, a rapidly pro-Trump message board that was formerly called the Donald.win, one user lamented the fact that Myanmar's army could not also be used Okay. Lamented the fact that Myanmar's army could not also be used to oust President Joe Biden. TFW, that fucking when you learn, I think, you learn that Myanmar's military can't come over to arrest your politicians too, Monsieur November. So they support violent military coups, apparently. Not everyone was convinced by the completely baseless attempts to shoehorn Myanmar into the QAnon mythology. Under a post showing photos of Aung San Suu Kyi meeting Obama and Soros, one user on the Great Awakening forum commented, "I'm just tired of random photos with no context. Yes, we know the wealthy elites all mixed together, but what is happening here and what is the significance of it?" Exactly. Another said, "Yeah, I don't get it. What are we looking at?" While another added, "Nothing to see here." It's so funny when they're actually losing grip on some of their people. Some of the people are actually falling off of the bandwagon. They're like, you know what? I don't see anything here. It's like, no fucking shit, because there's nothing there. Like, finally, you guys are getting it. Following Trump's defeat in November's election and Biden's inauguration 2 weeks ago, both events QAnon followers were told would not happen. The cult has tried to find a path forward that doesn't include Trump as president. After a brief period of unrest within Q World, the movement quickly got back on track by embracing aspects of the sovereign citizen movement and predicting that Trump would become president once again on March 4th, the date of the presidential inaugurations until 1933. Co-opting the coup in Myanmar into part of the plan is simply another attempt by the influences within the QAnon world to keep the conspiracy movement relevant and ensure their hundreds of thousands of loyal followers keep the faith. Biden meets Republicans on virus aid, but no quick deal. This is a story by Lisa Mascaro, Josh Boak, and Jonathan Lemire of the Associated Press on February 2nd, 2021. Out of Washington. President Joe Biden told Republican senators during a 2-hour meeting he's unwilling to settle on an insufficient coronavirus aid package after they pitched their slimmed-down $618 million proposal. That's a fraction of the $1.9 trillion he is seeking. No compromise was reached in the lengthy session Monday night, Biden's first with lawmakers at the White House, and Democrats in Congress pushed ahead with groundwork for approving a COVID relief plan with or without Republican votes. Despite the Republican group's appeal for bipartisanship, as part of Biden's efforts to unify the country, the president made it clear he won't delay aid in hopes of winning GOP support. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said that while there were areas of agreement, the president also reiterated his view that Congress must respond boldly and urgently and noted many areas which the Republican senator's proposal does not address. She said, "He will not slow down work on this urgent crisis response and will not settle for a package that fails to meet the moment." The two sides are far apart, with the Republican group of 10 senators focused primarily on the healthcare crisis and smaller $1,000 direct aid to Americans, and Biden leading Democrats toward a more sweeping rescue package 3 times the size to shore up households, local governments, and a partly shuttered economy. On a fast track, the goal is to have COVID relief approved by March when extra unemployment assistance and other pandemic aid expires, testing the ability of the new administration Congress to deliver with political risks for all sides from failure. Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine called the meeting a frank and very useful conversation, noting that the president also filled in some details on his proposal. "All of us are concerned about struggling families, teetering small businesses, and overwhelming healthcare," said Collins, flanked by other senators outside the White House. Republicans are tapping into bipartisan urgency to improve the nation's vaccine distribution and vastly expand virus testing with $160 billion in aid. That is similar to what Biden has proposed, but from there the two plans drastically diverge. The GOP's $1,000 direct payments would go to fewer households than the $1,400 Biden has proposed, and the Republicans offer only a fraction of what he wants to reopen schools. They also would give nothing to states, money that Democrats argue is just as important, with $350 billion in Biden's plan to keep police, fire, and other workers on the job. Gone are Democratic priorities such as the gradual lifting of the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Very Democrats pushed ahead at the Capitol, unwilling to take too much time in courting GOP support that may not materialize, or in delivering too meager a package that they believe doesn't address the scope of the nation's health crisis and economic problems. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer warned that history is filled with the costs of small thinking. House and Senate Democrats released a separate budget resolution Monday, a step toward approving Biden's package of the reconciliation process that wouldn't depend on Republican support for passage. The cost of inaction is high and growing, and the time for decisive action is now, Schumer and Speaker Nancy Pelosi said in a statement. The accelerating talks came as the Congressional Budget Office delivered mixed economic forecast Monday, with a robust growth expected at a 4.5% annual rate, but unemployment rates not to return to pre-pandemic levels for several years. The overture from the coalition of 10 GOP senators, mostly centrists, was an attempt to show that at least some in the Republican ranks want to work with Biden's new administration rather than simply operating as the opposition in the minority in Congress. Asked if Biden had shown a willingness to reduce his $1.9 trillion top line, Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana said, "He didn't say that, nor did we say we're willing to come up from the GOP plan. He said it's too early to say if a deal can be reached." But in echoes of the 2009 financial crisis, Democrats warn against too small a package as they believed happened during the Obama administration's attempts to pull the nation toward recovery. Psaki said earlier Monday there's obviously a big gap between the $1.9 trillion package Biden proposed and the $618 billion counteroffer. An invitation to the GOP senators to meet with Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris at the White House came hours after the lawmakers sent Biden a letter on Sunday urging him to negotiate rather than try to ram through his relief package solely on Democratic votes. This is what I don't understand, right? Because they literally just brought it up again with Obama. Obama's administration repeatedly gets criticized for choices they made, largely because for the large extent of Obama's administration, he tried so hard to work with Republicans. A lot of his thing too was about working with Republicans and trying to find middle grounds with them instead of pushing things over their heads. And yet, when it comes to Republicans, then the Republicans gain power, and they absolutely block Democrats on everything, and they push everything through, and they don't give a shit about the process. They don't give a shit about anything. They don't give a shit about rules. They will do whatever it takes to cause as much damage as possible. And the liberals are back in power, and they're all like, well, why aren't you negotiating with us? I don't understand. Stop it. It's like, so tired of it. I am so tired of it. Blah blah blah. There's paragraphs about going through what GOP's proposal is, how it differs. But fuck their proposal. Fuck the GOP. Fuck it all. Winning the support of 10 Republicans would be significant for Biden, potentially giving him the votes needed in the 50-50 Senate where Harris is a tiebreaker. Or he can push it through the budget reconciliation process, which would allow the bill to pass with a 51-vote majority in the Senate, rather than 60 votes typically needed to advance legislation. The White House remains committed to exploring avenues for bipartisanship, even as it prepares for Democrats to move alone on a COVID relief bill, according to a senior administration official granted anonymity to discuss the private thinking. Like, you cannot work with these people. They are professional trolls. And they act like trolls, and they are trolls, and it's about time we started treating them like trolls. Moving on from there. We're nearing the end. The end is in sight. Rihanna, Greta Thunberg, and Meena Harris show support for India's farm protests. I didn't even know anything about this until this. 2 days ago, Twitter had blocked about 250 accounts and tweets that showed support for the farmers' protests and criticized the government. What? This is Pallavi Pundir out of Delhi, India, and from Vice.com from February 3rd. On the evening of February 2nd, Indian social media woke up to a post breaking through the din of Twitter. Rihanna had just tweeted a news report about the Indian government cutting off the internet as farmers carried on their months-long protests in New Delhi. Why aren't we talking about this? The Barbadian singer tweeted to her 101 million followers. Apparently because people are getting banned for tweeting that. Are they going to ban Rihanna next? A few hours later, Swedish climate crisis activist Greta Thunberg tweeted in solidarity for the farmers as well. We stand in solidarity with the farmers in India. Next to tweet on this topic was Meena Harris, lawyer and niece of the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. And she, yes, okay, moving on. Militant nationalism is just as potent a force in U.S. politics as it is in India or any place else. It can only be stopped if people wake up to the reality that fascist dictators aren't going anywhere, not unless one, we organize, and two, there are consequences for the Capitol attack, she said on the same thread. Soon, the Indian government's Ministry of External Affairs released a statement that reiterated its stand on the controversial laws and said that groups with vested interests are trying to mobilize international support against India. We would like to emphasize that these protests must be seen in the context of India's democratic ethos and polity, it states. The temptation of sensationalist social media hashtags and comments, especially when resorted to by celebrities and others, is neither accurate nor responsible, it adds. Yeah, whatever. The tweets by the global personalities over the last 24 hours have broken the Indian social media sphere, with many Indians applauding these tweets for bringing attention to the burning issue. So India is also under some terrible shit going on right now and is having their human rights violated, as well as those other countries we talked about earlier. The tweets are also notable considering on February 1st, Twitter temporarily blocked about 250 accounts of tweets of Indians who'd supported the farmers' protests or were reporting on it as journalists. What the fuck? Common thread among all the blocked tweets and accounts was that it criticized the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party. The accounts have been restored. Thank God. I was ready to be like, fuck Twitter. Most of the Indian mainstream media has been reporting a different narrative of the farmers' movement. I mean, I was blocked from Twitter for 6 months once for criticizing Trump. That's not a lie. That's a fact. Very few Indian celebrities have supported the farmers' protests. Most of the support has come from actors and singers from the Punjab region who also joined the protests. Some Bollywood personalities have taken to Twitter to downplay the protests. Indian actor Kangna Ranaut responded to Rihanna's tweet and called the demonstrators terrorists. There are others too who didn't like Rihanna's vocal support. The farmer protests had been simmering since early last year after the Indian government proposed 3 controversial laws to reform the way farmers sell their produce. According to farmers' groups leading the protests, these laws give big corporations and private players more power over them. Protests blew up when the government passed the bills on September 20th. Since then, thousands of farmers have been camping on 3 borders of New Delhi to demand revocation of the unconstitutional bills. To break the logjam, the government has proposed to put the laws on hold for 18 months, but the farmers' union have not budged. On January 26th, India's Republic Day, violence broke out in New Delhi during a tractor rally organized by farmers. Since then, dozens of farmer leaders and 9 journalists have been charged and the internet cut off in several areas in and around New Delhi. Moving on from there. Elite Dangerous players say they're being scammed, trapped in space and forced to work. This is a fun story, actually, I thought. This is a story from February 4th by Charlie Hall on Polygon.com. For many players, the allure... Let me zoom out a little here. For many players, the allure of Elite Dangerous is the freedom to explore the Milky Way, to see stars and planets that no other player has ever seen before. For others, it's the combat, where you can test your mettle against other players or alien enemies that could easily snap your ship in two. But for a dedicated few, the real draw is making other people miserable. Unlike other professions in Elite Dangerous, being a dirtbag takes hard work, creativity, and the willingness to be the kind of asshole that thinks outside the box. Like when a group of farmers farmed a bunch of rare items, then hauled them 22,000 light years away in order to harass a terminal cancer patient. What? I don't understand that. I could click on that. Fuck it, we're clicking on it. Wow, that's a cool looking ship. The megaship Dove Enigma was added to the game by the developers Elite Dangerous as a tribute to Commander Dove Enigma and the entire expedition to Colonia. It has since been sabotaged. What? Player that expedition to the fringes of the galaxy in Elite Dangerous is in trouble. Griefers have sabotaged a critical location, meaning that a joyride through the galaxy meant as a tribute to a terminal cancer patient is suddenly at risk of not reaching its goal. The Enigma expedition set out on January 12th, headed to Colonia, a distant star system in Elite's strikingly realistic depiction of our Milky Way galaxy. The trip is meant as a tribute to Commander Dove Enigma 13, whose real name is Brendan Keith. According to the original post, Keith has been battling cancer for at least 3 years and his outlook is terminal. This may be his last chance to make the trip. Traveling with him and enjoying the ride in real life is his 5-year-old daughter. Aww. Colonia is... That's adorable. How old is this guy? Colonia is more than 22,000 light years from the civilized center of Elite's galaxy. Skilled players can make it there if they push hard for an entire day, but given Keith's condition, the fleet is moving at his pace. They're scheduled to arrive around February 4th. Today comes word that their final waypoint, a massive megaship placed in the game world by the game developers, and which they have named Dove Enigma, has been sabotaged. An automated message broadcast galaxy-wide in Elite announced to all players today that the Dove Enigma is experiencing technical difficulties. That means one or more players have gone to great lengths to purposely harm the megaship, ranging far ahead of the Enigma expedition fleet and possibly making multiple trips. It's an awful lot of effort to grief another player, especially one who is terminally ill. The players making the trip aren't necessarily in any jeopardy. They should be able to refuel at nearby stars for the return trip, and given enough time, someone could make it out to assist them if they became damaged and were unable to get repairs at Dove Enigma. But the megaship isn't operational when they arrive. It would be a thumb in the eye to more than 560 players who banded together to make the journey with Keith. Polygon is trying to reach out to the leaders of the expedition for comment, as well as the game's developers at Frontier to see if they will intervene. Right now, players across the Elite Game world are sending up a cry for help. If enough meta alloys are delivered to the Dove Enigma, there's a chance that it could be operational by February 4th. One commander, a streamer by handle DJ Truthsayer, is making deliveries right now. I don't know what this all means. Polygon spoke with Commander Splat via Discord, an in-game ally of DJ Truthsayer. He says that their group, called the Sovereignty, is putting all their efforts into ferrying relief to Colonia. He and the rest of the Sovereignty's leadership say that those interested in participating should join the Discord server. Update. After our original story was published, Polygon was able to reach one of the players leading the Enigma expedition, who goes by the handle Commander Greytest. They emphasize that the threat to the fleet is minor at best. The whole area around Colonia is populated with many stations and bases, said Greytest, and some of the services not being available on the megaship is practically irrelevant. We even have plenty of support ships with us for repairs and fuel for the occasional mishap, so they'll be able to get to the end, it's fine. All that remains is a respectless and despicable but ultimately meaningless act that, in my humble opinion, got way too much upwind. The positive side is the incredible support of Echo it caused. Frontier also echoed the sentiment in a post made early this morning and implied that it has peeked behind the curtain, as it were, and Dove Enigma should be in good shape by February 4th. So in other words, if it's not in good shape, they will just snap their fingers and fix it behind the scenes with the push of a button. From our view of the galaxy, we can see an overwhelming number of commanders taking flight in one direction and with one purpose: to counter the shutdowns, said Zach Antonaki, Frontier's head of communications. With this staggering outpouring of support, we are confident that the shutdown will be reverted as commanders arrive. Antonaki also went on to apologize for allowing a memorial installation placed in game to have a vulnerability in the first place. Seeing the community come together and support their fellow commander and support such a good cause is amazing for all of us in the studio. We're sorry for our oversight. We thank you for taking to your cockpits. Additionally, our original story misstated the remoteness of Colonia. We've adjusted the article. I've also stayed out on my own journey to visit the system and see it for myself. Good luck. I actually can't play the game too. Maybe I should check it out. Some of the comments. Happy to hear that much of the community is counting the douchebaggery with even greater kindness and empathy. I love the Davis. There are elements of the community that are generally awful. I don't know what you're talking about. Back to the story we were reading. That little episode set the bar pretty high. But recently a group of players vaulted over it like a team of heavily armed Olympic gymnasts. Last month, a group of players worked to create a deep space gulag, an in-game space prison designed to quietly trap new players and exploit their labor, and they almost got away with it. Our story starts with a man named Jason. I'm not using his last name or his in-game handle for privacy reasons. He's been playing games in the Elite franchise since 1984, and now he's sharing the experience with his children. His youngest son is 7, and even though the game is rated for older players, Jason makes sure that his littlest commander always plays with supervision. On January 29th, that supervisor was his 10-year-old sister. And this must be a super smart sister, by the way this story makes her out to be. Someone approaches them in-game, Jason told me over Discord, flies up alongside them and starts talking on in-game chat. I like to think I've ingrained some degree of online safety smarts, so my daughter took over, left the system, and calls for me. She talked me through the encounter and what had been said, he continued. Turns out the rumors I had been hearing elsewhere were true. Jason's kids had received a rather lucrative proposition. They were encouraged to fly to a fleet carrier, a mobile, player-owned base, and exchange some simple goods for a large amount of in-game currency. Once money changed hands, a group of players would help them build a new starship, fly them to a mining claim, and help them break apart asteroids. The goal was to work together in order to farm void opals, one of the rarest and most expensive commodities in the game. The offer sounded too good to be true, and the girl's strange danger instincts kicked in. If his older sister hadn't intervened, Jason's son would have been forced to sell off those void opals for far less than their fair market value. Other players would then export those commodities to another system, profiting from his work. Making matters worse, Jason's son would have been trapped in that mining system, stranded more than 800 light years from the populous center of the in-game galaxy. There would have been no way back other than to self-destruct his new starship and effectively begin Elite's grind all over again. I praised her for doing the right thing and reinforced the message with my boy, who, truth be told, would have jumped straight in the van, Jason says. As it turns out, many older players jumped in the van before him. At least a dozen, likely more, had already been trapped, press ganged into working for low wages in a star system they had little hope of ever escaping. Polygon spoke with 4 commanders who'd been trapped this way. Looking into the details of the scheme, it was actually quite clever. The perpetrators hung out around star systems heavily populated with new players, many of them brought into the game by a free giveaway on the Epic Game Store in November. They said they were looking for recruits and offered to give these players money to buy a better ship, but also training in how to farm void opals and a free ride to a good spot to find them. Behind the scenes, they were exploiting in-game systems to isolate these new commanders from everyone else in the game. First, they required new recruits to join a private instance of Elite called a player group PG. Playing in a player group, a PG, is a good way to make sure you can meet up with your friends and allies, but it also cuts you off from ever seeing anyone else. Contributing to that isolation was the fact that this all happened on Xbox One, which has a markedly smaller player population than the PC version of the game. Travel in Elite Dangerous is accomplished by folding space and jumping between star systems, using a neighboring star cluster as a kind of beacon. Once in the PG, players were instructed to outfit a new starship in a particular way that limited its range to less than 2 light years. As a consequence, they were unable to travel to another star system without the help of a fleet carrier. Fleet carriers are relatively new to Elite Dangerous, and were added to the game just last year. After a buggy first few months, they quickly became the preferred way to travel long distances thanks to their 500 light year jump range, nearly 5 times further than any other ship in the game, but they also helped to isolate these new players even more. Once docked on board with their custom-built mining rigs, recruits were ferried 800 light years from the heart of the Milky Way and left to rot. Their only gameplay options: mine void opals and sell them back to the carrier that brought them in for roughly 1/6 of their fair market price or self-destruct. Some commanders actually took their entrapment pretty well. I actually felt amused by the whole situation, one told me on Discord. I mean, I generally wanted to help, but seeing how deep some people can get into this sparks curiosity. That's why I wanted to participate in the first place. My state of mind is that I'm a grown up that understands consequences of decisions, and putting a blame on my consequences to someone else is simply wrong. This is a classic case of good versus evil that keeps a balance. Others had very much the opposite reaction. A handful quit the game entirely. Still others tried to reason with their captors, but they say they were quickly shouted down or otherwise silenced on Discord. But one brave commander actually tried to get help. They called in the Fuel Rats, a player-organized faction in Elite Dangerous dedicated to rescuing players who run out of fuel. I've heard about them before. It's funny that they've made such a name for themselves. Do Fuel Rats rescue pilots trapped in essentially concentration camps? Reads the chat log, to which the dispatcher on duty that evening responded with a confused, huh? The dispatcher assumed that the player was referring to an in-game mechanism that puts misbehaving players in jail, sending them to a penitentiary ship for high crimes, misdemeanors against AI-controlled ships. But it quickly became apparent something more sinister was going on. The Fuel Rats are a good bunch. In fact, they recently logged rescue number 100,000. They've rescued 100,000 players in the game. An achievement that was celebrated by Elite Dangerous publisher Frontier Developments in-game, but they don't actually offer a service whereby they save people from labor camps. So the Fuel Rats called in the specialists, known as the Hull Seals. The newly formed group performs high-risk repairs and other oddball rescues. A player in the Fuel Rats named Commander Lead was among the first to start organizing a rescue. Commander Modimus was put in command of that effort and using various Hull Seal assets. I love how this all sounds like an actual real world thing. Like different organizations and ranks and operations and missions. It's like an actual military or rescue effort. Commander Modimus was put in command of that effort and, using various Hull Seal assets, including multiple fleet carriers of their own, they mounted a rescue operation. After several weeks of work, around a dozen newbie pilots have been pulled out and brought to safety. He tells Polygon that they think as many as 50 more players are still trapped, although at least some may be willing participants. The operation is now under the control of another player, Commander Aether. Those interested in helping out or getting rescued are being directed to the New Pilots Initiative Discord server. The entire affair will be discussed in detail soon on the Squeaking Fuel podcast. To get their side of the story, I hopped into the perpetrator's Discord channel. Elite's code of conduct prohibits naming and shaming other players, so I'll not be revealing the name of the server or the individuals that I encountered there. What I found even in the entry lobby was a small community comfortable with heinous racial slurs and harassment. Hardly the place for a 7-year-old. Things started out cordially enough. When confronted, however, one member pushed back on the assertion that they were duping players. Everything was above board, they claimed, and players were allowed to come and go as they pleased. Anything to the contrary, they said, was a pathetic sob story. Other players, Polygon spoke to, refuted these claims. When I asked perpetrators if they were aware that they had nearly entrapped a minor to be a minor, the moderators of the Discord kicked me out. Later, one of them reached out via direct message claiming to be the creator of the scheme. It was really just for giggles, they told me. In reality, anyone could self-destruct and find their way. And the fleet carrier traffic we produced before anyone else got involved would also allow for anyone to hitch a ride to and fro, which some players did. They said calling those commanders caught up in the scheme trapped was overstating it. It was just a very aggressive recruitment effort for their player group. I asked for numbers on how many other players were involved, but they refused to share that information. I asked them if they would keep on doing it. That's when their tone shifted. Considering the cat's out of the bag and people will now try to mimic my method, yes, they said. No, not only will I keep doing it, I'm going to step it up a notch. I'm going to recruit harder than ever before. I, along with my cohorts, are going to build the greatest noob army this game has ever seen. We will truly be able to shape the galaxy with our wealth and influence. All this publicity has thrown us into a frenzy, and we will not go into private play like some are saying. We are going to do it in the open, so all can witness the glory. That's quite the monologue. Frontier Developments is in contact with the New Pods initiative about their rescue efforts. Even now, other player groups are coming together to launch rescue missions of their own on Xbox One. At least one carrier has been positioned in system following the wake of the perpetrators' own ships. They've been set up to sell the parts needed to escape the gulag at a fair price. Reached for comment, Frontier's public relations and communications direct manager said his team is monitoring the situation closely. As you well know, Elite Dangerous is a sandbox based on a one-to-one recreation of our Milky Way, with the ability for commanders to blaze their own trail of fundamental tenet of the game. For those who don't know, it's basically like EVE Online, but with Twitch gameplay instead of more RPG gameplay. We are closely monitoring the situation with the community and live game teams. Our estimation is that fewer than 20 commanders have been affected by the behavior of a small minority of players. But still, it's hilarious trolling. I will stop wasting time on this. Again, apparently it was only 20 people. But it's just, I thought that was a funny story. And worth going over. Moving on. Parlay CEO says board fired him for planning to ban neo-Nazi groups. This is a story on arstechnica.com on February 4th, 2021. Parlay co-founder and CEO John Matz, who helmed the company through its explosive 2020 growth and even more explosive 2021 deplatforming, has reportedly been fired. The company board ousted the former executive last Friday, the Wall Street Journal was first to report. In a statement, Matt said he met constant resistance to his product vision, his strong belief in free speech, and his view of how Parlay should be run, adding that he advocated for more product stability and what I believe is a more effective approach to content moderation. Matt's claimed to have been within days of bringing Parlay back online at the time he was ousted. So basically, the guy who created Parlay tried to create like a compromise for moderation because they keep being banned for Nazi bullshit and QAnon bullshit, and then for his efforts he was fired. Matt's original approach to content moderation, i.e. not having any, is what landed Parlay in hot water last month and resulted in it eventually being kicked off the internet. Parlay launched in 2018 as a free speech alternative to Facebook and Twitter. Through 2019-2020, it picked up a base of politically conservative right-wing users who felt mostly incorrectly that other platforms, especially Twitter, were suppressing conservative speech. As I pointed out, they banned me for 6 months for criticizing Trump. So are they also suppressing liberal speech? Are they suppressing both sides at the same time? Or are they just kind of assholes sometimes? And inconsistent when it comes to their enforcing of the rules, and then also trying to whatchamacallit, repeal them, trying to get them to like for those 6 months I spent the whole time being like, I don't know why you did this to me. What you did to me is wrong. Take a look at my thing. Like, something's not right here. And they just kept ignoring me. There was no part of their customer service was remotely interested in even like acknowledging I existed. for 6 months straight, there was just no word, and then suddenly my account was just put back. And I don't even know if it was put back because 6 months passed, and that was just how long they were going to ban it for, or if it was put back because on that day, what I did was I went to all like 200 of my followers, and I sent the message saying, "Hey, I guess I'm never getting my account back, so here's my new account." And then suddenly that same day, I got my account back. So I don't know what's up with Twitter, but I do think on some level, the way that they deal with bans and things like that needs a lot of work because innocent people are getting fucked and guilty people are getting away with murder, and it's a bunch of bullshit. Moving on from there, first-hand accounts of torture shed new light on horrors in Yin Yang. This one really fucks me up and really important. So you better read this thing up. It's already over 2 hours. Wow, this is a long episode. This story was a really eventful week apparently. So much freaking shit happened, and the whole time I just spent banging my head on a keyboard trying to write. But meanwhile, the whole world is going to hell. So isn't that fun? This is a story by Gavin Butler on February 4th or April 2nd, depending on whether or not you want to read that date the way they intended or whatever. Anyway. A new report of Muslim detainees being systematically raped and sexually abused in China's detention camps has renewed calls for the international community to take action against mass human rights abuses in Yin Yang. The accounts of violence told to the BBC by 3 female former detainees and 1 former guard paint a chilling picture of life inside the internment camps, where an estimated 1 million members of ethnic Uyghur and other Muslim groups are being held against their will. The British broadcaster said the former detainees in the guard experienced or saw evidence of an organized system of mass rape, sexual abuse, and torture. One detainee said that women were removed from their cells every night and raped by 1 or more masked Chinese men. I should have read the warning at the beginning of this. There's rape. If you are upset by very upsetting things, then you should grin and bear it because this is important. This shit happened. Adding that she was tortured and gang raped on 3 occasions. The BBC said it was impossible to fully verify the account of the detainee, whom it said had fled Yin Yang to Kazakhstan and was now in the United States. The travel documents provided by the detainee corroborated her story's timeline, BBC said. Another detainee said she was forced to strip Uyghur women naked, handcuff them to the bed so that they could be raped by guards, then take them for a shower and clean the room where it happened. A third detainee said some women were tortured by guards who raped them with an electrified stick. Vice World News could not independently verify the allegations. That's unimaginable. Uyghur advocacy groups say that such horrific details constitute further evidence of the severe abuse and mistreatment of Uyghurs by Chinese authorities. And let's keep in mind the Chinese government says, no, we're just re-educating them to make them better citizens because they're all very confused and we're helping them. Fuck off, Chinese government. Fucking fuck off. Chinese policemen and camp staff and their methods of conducting sexual abuse and torture towards Uyghur women are the same and consistent, Nurgle Salwat from the group Campaign for Uyghurs told the ABC. Their common methods are gang rape, attacks on Uyghur women's dignity, and selling Uyghur women as sex slaves. The U.S. government on Wednesday said it was deeply disturbed by the reports of sexual abuse and repeated U.S. charges that Beijing's actions in Yin Yang amounted to crimes against humanity and genocide. Reuters reported. A State Department spokeswoman said China should immediately allow independent investigations into the rape allegations and other atrocities in Xinjiang, according to Reuters. But of course, nothing will ever be done. No one will ever do anything. No one will ever hold China accountable for the fucking torture that they're doing to these million people. Nobody gives a fucking shit. Not even the slightest little teensy bits of a shit. Why? Because they're so fucking huge, because they're so fucking powerful that nobody can call them out. Because the whole fucking world owes them billions of dollars in debt. Everyone is a slave to China now, and we just have to grin and bear it as China proceeds to be worse than fucking Hitler. How is this different than what the Nazis did to the Jews? You explain to me how this is better than what the Nazis did to the Jews. Because I'm arguing that fucking Xi Jinping, whatever the fuck his name is, Is that the guy's name or the name of the that's his name is the fucking Winnie the Pooh guy. Winnie the Pooh China. The best way to look up this guy every time. President Z. Yeah, I was right. Xi Jinping. I'm right. That is the name of the dude. It sounds like the name of a place. What do I know? Xinjiang is the name of the place. What do I know? But Xi Jinping, I swear to God, is as is more dangerous than Hitler because he has more power behind him and he is making all the same choices. He's being just as much of a fucking crazy ass dictator. He's the next Hitler. And it's happening right now. And I don't know if the entire world teamed up against China if they would win or not. I mean, China's got fucking 1 billion people. Like, if we went to if we held them accountable and this turned to war, it would be the end. It would be over. Like, there would be World War III. Nukes fucking flying everywhere. So of course they can't hold. In other words, they cannot hold China accountable. It's literally impossible. And because of that, China can get away with murder. China can be Hitler, and there's nothing we can do about it. Hell, if Hitler had nuclear weapons, what would we have done then? Chinese policemen and camp staff and camp staff and their methods of conducting sexual abuse and torture towards Uyghur women are the same. We already read that. The U.S. government on Wednesday said it was deeply disturbed by the reports of sexual abuse and repeated U.S. charges that Beijing's actions in Xinjiang amounted to crimes against humanity and genocide. Reuters reported. I think I read that too. A State Department spokeswoman said China should immediately allow independent investigation. I read that too. China's state-sanctioned oppression of Uyghurs has taken place in the far western region since at least 2014, when the Communist Party of China launched what it called the Strike Hard campaign against violent terrorism, an attempt by the government following several terror attacks from Uyghur separatists to combat religious extremism by punishing Uyghurs. So, because some religious extremists were Muslim, they decided to punish all Uyghurs. Chinese authorities have used so-called re-education camps to indoctrinate Uyghurs and other Muslims since at least 2017, according to Human Rights Watch, detaining them for the stated purpose of promoting social integration. And I've been calling this out for a while. I'm sure I've mentioned this repeatedly on this podcast since I've been doing this podcast. Probably before I was doing it as like when it was just a blog on the thing, I was already bringing up this bullshit. China was also found to use advanced technology to conduct predictive policing of the mostly Muslim minority, selecting them for detention based on seemingly innocuous behavior. A former guard at the camps. So again, these people that are being detained are doing absolutely nothing. They're being taken off the street for absolutely no reason and then becoming prisoners, having their freedoms taken away for no reason, and then being tortured, being raped. A former guard at the camp told the BBC that detainees were punished for seemingly minor infractions, such as failing to accurately memorize passages from books about Xi Jinping. So they have to memorize biographies about Xi Jinping word for word, or else they're punished by being raped, or by having food withheld, or being beaten. Once we were taking the people arrested into the concentration camp, and I saw everyone being forced to memorize those books. They sit for hours trying to memorize the text. Everyone had a book in their hands, said the guard. I entered those camps. I took detainees into those camps. I saw those sick, miserable people. They definitely experienced various types of torture. I am sure of that. Honestly, that has to be one of the most angering, moving. I don't get it. I don't understand how this shit doesn't get called out. That's what I just plain don't understand. And I apparently repeated this article twice. I could delete one of them, but it's worth repeating twice. So yeah, I have a really hard time with that story. I just don't get it. I don't get how China gets away with it again. How everyone who acts this way gets away with it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. But then people love to call out bullshit. It's all a bunch. It's all a game. It's a game to the Chinese government. Like this whole trolling bullshit game is exactly what this is. Just as how in India, remember in India, how they were all like, "Oh, these media people are talking about things they don't fully understand." It's all just a fucking trolling game. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're just trying to confuse everyone using the same tactics Trump used, using the same tactics that China uses every single fucking day, using the same tactics QAnon uses, using the same tactics Hitler used. It's all the same fucking bullshit, and I'm fucking tired of it. I'm fucking tired of people getting away with it, and I'm fucking tired of liberals thinking that they can work with these people, that these people somehow are reasonable human beings that need to be listened to and respected, because it's not true. And Xi Jinping, fucking whoop Winnie the fucking Pooh, is not remotely someone to be respected. He can go to fucking hell. And I live in Canada, I can say that he can eat my fucking shit. He can suck my fucking dick. I keep looking out there as if like a satellite will fucking just fire a laser on me or something. But fucking, I don't give a shit. I'm so fucking done with China. Moving on, Kevin McCarthy wants you to believe he has no idea what QAnon is, which is complete fucking bullshit too. Just like everything else, it's more fucking tactics. It's conservative fucking bullshit. David Gilbert, either February 4th or April 2nd, depending on whether you're willing to read Vice's bullshit way of writing the date. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy pretended on Wednesday night that he didn't know what QAnon was or even how to pronounce it. He's like, QAnon, did I say it right? It's like, fuck off. Following a private meeting of House Republicans on Wednesday, McCarthy spoke to the press and said that the GOP would not punish Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, the QAnon supporting conspiracy theorist from Georgia. Then he praised Greene for apologizing to the party for her deranged social media output, before attempting to say that he didn't even know what the cult was all about. I think it would be helpful if you could hear exactly what she told all of us, denouncing QAnon. I don't know if I said it right. I don't even know what it is. He says, and people have been quick to point out that apparently there is video footage of him denouncing QAnon a year ago. Him saying that he's absolutely not with QAnon and that the GOP party denounces QAnon. And so to go from that to here be like, how do we know what it is? Almost makes it sound like he's been indoctrinated. As if he's one of them. That's an odd thing to hear from a man who's been at the center of the row over Green's dangerous embrace of the QAnon cult in recent weeks. It's even stranger for a man who said this last August. Let me be very clear. There is no place for QAnon in the Republican Party. I do not support it, McCarthy told Fox News in August. Odder still is the fact that McCarthy mentioned QAnon in a statement he put out just hours before he made the comments on Wednesday evening. Past comments from and endorsed by Marjorie Taylor Greene on school shootings, political violence, and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories do not represent the values or beliefs of the House Republican Conference. Apparently they do. I condemn those comments unequivocally. Apparently he spent 2 hours with Marjorie Taylor Greene and changed his mind and was like, you know what? QAnon's awesome. Go QAnon. I mean, QAnon. I don't know what that is. That was him, not me, for the record. Just for the record. If you're not watching the video, I just did a white powered hand signal thing pretending to be Kevin McCarthy. Moving on. Democrats just dared Trump to testify at his own impeachment trial. Democrats just blah 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 by Greg Walters, April 2nd. Shut up. Update on see even when they do update, then they have it 2-4. Like they have it correctly, they have the date correctly in the update, but then at the top they have it incorrectly with the fucking day first and then the month. It's just like they don't. Who's making this choice? God damn it! Can't even be consistent within like 3 inches of anyway. Former President Donald Trump refused. Yeah, so let's start at the bottom and we'll read that last. Is this all part of that? I think it is. Okay. Democrats just dared Trump to take the stand. House impeachment managers invited former President Trump on Thursday to testify at his own Senate impeachment trial under oath next week, setting the stage for potentially explosive courtroom drama. Trump could testify either during the trial or beforehand, or on any date between Monday, February 8th through the following Thursday, February 11th. Lead impeachment manager Representative Jamie Raskin wrote in a letter sent to Trump. The trial officially starts on Tuesday, February 9th. If you decline this invitation, we reserve any and all rights, including the right to establish at trial that your refusal to testify supports a strong adverse inference regarding your actions, Raskin, a Democrat from Maryland, wrote. I would request you respond to this letter by no later than Friday, February 5th, 2021 at 5 p.m. Notice again, all of these are putting the month and then the day. Like, it's common formatting. I don't understand why they keep insisting at the top to put the day and the month. Anyway, this isn't about Vice's writing of the date. Trump's testimony would throw an unpredictable and volatile element into the proceeding. Trump was forced to replace his entire legal team last weekend after 5 lawyers quit on him, reportedly because he insisted they push forward his basis argument that he didn't actually lose the election. Democrats invited Trump to testify at his own impeachment trial, says Greg Walters, and he has a picture of the letter, which is beautiful, and you can read that in full right there. If Trump accepts the offer to testify under oath, his habit of telling wild lies could get him into fresh legal trouble. Trump made over 30,000 false or misleading claims during his presidency, according to one tally by the Washington Post. Trump was famously restrained from testifying before former special counsel Robert Mueller's Russian investigators by his lawyers, who reportedly worried that he wouldn't be able to stop himself from telling bold-faced lies that could get him charged with perjury. Yeah, which is exactly why I really wish he would do it. I really want him to testify. I think that would be great. I think he would absolutely get himself fucked. He would fuck himself. And finally, people could see how much of a monster he is. Let's have him fucking on trial. Former President Donald Trump refused Democrats' invitation to testify in a brief letter signed by his lawyers on Thursday afternoon. We are in receipt of your latest public relations stunt, the lawyers, Bruce Castor and David Schoen, wrote. Your letter only confirms what is known to everyone. You cannot prove your allegations against 45th President of the United States, who is now a private citizen. I'm sorry, what? Since when is asking for witness testimony a sign of a lack of proof? Isn't that just a normal process of a case? Like, don't you usually have proof and witnesses? Always? What the fuck are they talking about? The use of our Constitution to bring a purported impeachment proceeding is much too serious to play these games. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck Trump. Fuck everything. Fuck this world. Last story. Here we go. Right out of the Associated Press by Vladimir Isachenkov out of Moscow. Russian authorities on Wednesday shrugged off the massive rallies against the jailing of top Kremlin foe Alexei Navalny and rejected Western criticism as hysterics, as activists reported more than 1,400 new arrests in the crackdown on protesters. So here's another tyrannical, bullshitty crackdown on human rights bullshittiness. It's not just Asia. It's technically Russia is Asia. It's not just Asian nations. It's not just Middle Eastern nations. It's fucking all of Asia. Russian authorities on Wednesday shrugged off the massive rallies against the jailing of top Kremlin foe Alexei Navalny and rejected Western criticism as hysterics, as activists reported more than 1,400 new arrests and crackdown on protests. I already read that, but I don't care. I finished it anyway. Moscow court on Tuesday ordered Navalny to prison for 2 years and 8 months, finding that he violated the terms of his probation while recuperating in Germany from a nerve agent poisoning. Again, let's cover this. The government poisoned him, and then they arrested him because he violated the terms of his probation while escaping and recovering from the poison that they did to him. What? The ruling immediately ignited new protests in Moscow and St. Petersburg that followed massive rallies over the past 2 weekends. Because, I mean, that's super bold, right? Like, that takes an extra, there's China and there's India and there's Myanmar, and all these people are trying to do the best, be like, nothing's going on here, you guys are just making shit up, move along. And then there's Putin, who's just blatantly like, yeah, he didn't admit to poisoning, but I mean, like, we know that they poisoned him, and they're just blatantly like, and not only that, now we're arresting his ass. We don't fucking give a shit. And that's the level of Putin's not giving of a shit is just beyond the pale. The only thing that makes China more dangerous is because they're bigger and more powerful. But like, Putin is far less of a given a shit kind of person. It's insane. Speaking in court, Navalny denounced accusations against him as fabricated and driven by President Vladimir Putin's fear and hatred, saying that the Russian leader will go down in history as a poisoner. Clearly, asked to comment on Navalny's speech, which was shared widely on Russian social media platforms, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov responded that it's not up to him to determine Putin's place in history. Like Putin, no, it seems like Putin's doing quite a good job of that on his own. Peskov avoids mentioning Navalny by name. Navalny, a 44-year-old anti-corruption campaigner who is Putin's most determined political foe, was arrested January 17th upon returning from his 5-month convalescence in Germany from the poisoning which he has blamed on the Kremlin. Russian authorities deny any involvement and claim they have no proof that he was poisoned despite tests by several European labs. But then they went and arrested him when he came back to the country, proving that they did it! Why? Explain that. The prison sentence for Navalny and Russia's tough police response to peaceful protests drew harsh criticism from the United States and European Union nations. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged Moscow to immediately free Navalny and those who were detained during protests. Even as we work with Russia to advance U.S. interests, we will coordinate closely with our allies and partners to hold Russia accountable for failing to uphold the rights of its citizens. He said, he being the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. French President Emmanuel Macron called Navalny's conviction unacceptable and called for his immediate release. A political disagreement is never a crime, Macron said. The respect of human rights, like that of democratic freedom, is non-negotiable, only except when it comes to Russia, China, Myanmar, India, potentially, possibly, Republicans think the United States. I mean, what other, what other crazy fucking pick any number, go for it, have fun. A number of crazy fucking countries. All those Asians ones we listed: Thailand, the Philippines. I think it said, did it say Vietnam is currently one of the more democratic of the ones off, but even that one's all fucked up. I can't remember. Like they all kind of melded together in my head. Anyway, shows how much I paid attention to that last story, that earlier story. Chancellor Angela Merkel's spokesman in Germany, Steven Seibert, on Wednesday reiterated that Germany leaders called for Navalny's immediate release and an end to the police crackdown against anti-government protesters. I read that sentence wrong, but I don't care. Seibert told reporters that the Moscow court's ruling was far from the principles of rule of law, noting that it was based on Navalny's earlier conviction when the European Court of Human Rights had deemed arbitrary and a breach of Navalny's rights to a fair trial. The German government condemns the systematic use of violence against peaceful protesters. And the only reason why this is going on right now, right, is because the poison failed. Imagine if the poison succeeded, and then we wouldn't even be talking about this right now. It would just be like, well, Putin probably poisoned that guy. Ah, well. And then people just move on with their lives. Like, I'm so tired of people not being held accountable for these horrible things that are going on in the world. But then other people get held accountable for fucking nothing. And then they act like, well, that's the law. What do you expect? It's like, well, it seems like I should expect absolutely nothing ever and fucking purge 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Because that's all fucking we get from government or anything happening on a political level. So, like, why the fuck are they held to a different standard than everyone fucking else in the world? I'm so fucking tired of this shit. Geekly blog. Sorry, this is a little late again. I've been having hard times with my sleeping lately. I've been going to bed later and later and getting frustrated and angry and stuff. Blah, 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 blah. I'm an angry white guy. One of those angry white boys everybody complains about. And I keep waking up at noon. My day keeps disappearing before my eyes. You don't know what that's like. I mean, you probably do, but whatever. I've been trying to stay productive and keep trying to better my life, but all week this week I keep waking up late without fail, trying to work on my book and having the whole day go by while working on my book, only for me to accomplish next to nothing, and the sun is down and it's time to catch up on TV and pass out, which always takes me longer than it should, and next thing I know it's 3 a.m. again, I'm lying in bed, tired a minute ago, and now unable to sleep. I haven't played any games all week, really, I can remember, and I cut Resident Alien off the list. I think I already mentioned that during the TV rankings. But yeah, Resident Alien, sorry. If you like Alan Tudyk, then keep watching it by all means and let me know how it is. This is not how this is supposed to be happening. What is not how I just don't know how my time management skills are getting worse. My life is becoming more of a mess, not less of a mess. I don't know how this is happening. Considering that I no longer have a job, I would think that things should be coming together, but instead somehow things are just getting more messy. It's like stop, stop, stop. I gotta figure out my shit. Gotta figure out my shit. So that's why I'm trying to just get Dakota Say done. I'm trying to push through Dakota Say, get not just this weekend's thing done, but I would love to get the whole month's thing done, and then I kind of focus on the rest of my life for the rest of the month, and also focus on the changes I want to make leading up to the next phase of 99% Geek, because this is the transition month. So I think I'm still gonna do the audiobooks at the normal times, but I'm gonna try and get the book actually, and I'm gonna release it on the Patreon at the normal time. So I'm gonna try and have it all ready earlier. Um, Maybe I could even get a start on the next book early too. Wouldn't that be nice? Moving on from there, my plan for next week. My plan for next week. Try to finish Dakota Say, not just this week's writing, but the whole month. I already said that. One that's out of the way, I can once that's out of the way, I can sort of relax for the rest of the month. Try to snap myself out of this funk, and then play the last Hitman game. I need to play it before the reboot. Absolution in brackets. Try to beat it as fast as I can because IO has started moving on with Hitman 3's post-game content, announcing the first elusive target, even though they never discussed how elusive targets would be changing like they promised they would. I guess it was a lie when they said that, because they made this announcement before. They were like, elusive target's gonna be different this time around, and stay tuned. We're gonna make an announcement about how they're gonna be changing, and that was like a year ago. And I mean pre-orders and shit happen. And I was like, I love these games, but I'm not gonna pre-order until I hear what's up with these elusive targets. Maybe I won't need to worry about the game for a while. I can't wait to hear what's up with these elusive targets. That's the part of the game I actually really only ever cared about up until now. So let's hear what's up with those. And then they just never came out with the information they promised us. And then now it happened. Now they came out with the roadmap for February, and it just lists on their first elusive target. It's like, so you're just never gonna do the announcement you're just talking about. Like, so confused. But fine, whatever. So they work the same as before then, I guess. Cool. I think they said something about we can put them in any maps from any of the three games. It's like, yeah, cool. Was that the big change you were talking about? Because anyway, so that's coming out, I think, February 24th. So if you are interested in getting into Hitman and you haven't done so yet, like me, the new game, I mean, the first of the timed DLC is happening February 24th. What that is on when that happens, there will be a week period in which you can play this one specific mission, and it's only going to be there for that week. And you can only play it once, and it's if you failed it, for instance, like if you can restart it without dying. So like if you're like, oh fuck, I can do this better, or oh fuck, I've been spotted, I'm about to die, quickly restart, you're good. But if you die, it's over. If you kill the target, you can no longer restart. So then you have to escape without dying. Um, and if you die again, it's over. If you can't escape or whatever for whatever reason, it's over. If you fail to get the target, it's over. So it's like a one chance thing. You gotta it's because Hitman is often about figuring out the patterns of everything and all that, this and the other. Having a one time only thing makes it a totally different kind of experience, and it's really fun. But because of that, you kind of got to be there as it's happening. So anyone who hasn't gotten into Hitman 3 yet and want to, I really suggest you do it this month. And I really suggest you tune into that elusive target. They are a lot of fun, and they're fun to compare with others. Like, did you beat this one this week? I beat this one this week. I beat this one in like 2 minutes. I did it really fast. I kicked its ass. Oh shit, I had a hard time with it. Like that's just a way to, it's kind of like how when a TV show releases new episodes every week. It's something where once a month we're all doing the same thing at the same time, and we can all talk about, man, that was awesome or whatever. So check that out if that's what you're interested in. Moving on from there, the Geekly Weekly comments and questions and stats. Not much has changed because I've been trying to force myself to write, and I've been doing nothing else. I've spent a lot of time, I think, distracting myself on Twitter, which has led to increased Twitter activity and followers, which I guess is kind of a good thing. I finally hit 230 followers after being at 220 for years and years. Elsewhere, my stats have been somewhat abysmal, actually, to be honest. I said abysmal, but I think I'm an abysmal. Unless they're both words, I'm not sure. My podcast is doing worse than usual. My Patreon had the random spike last week, and now it too is largely dead. I really feel like I'm wasting all my time here. I really can't tell if there's even one person who's appreciating any of this. Like, has anyone made it to the end of this? Who the hell knows? I can't tell. For all I know, everyone just think I suck. There was one person last week who I met on I think on World of Warcraft, and he was somewhat interested in my writing, and so he checked it out. He checked out my podcast first, tried to do the audiobook thing, and he said that like, well, you really should be putting more work into it and maybe editing it some and acting better and really, like if you really tried and slowed it down and made it your focus, you could really turn into something special. I'm just like, this isn't, I want to be a writer. I don't want to be an audio, like I'm doing that just because I want people to do my stuff. But like I want people to find me. And any way they can find me good, but like it's not like it's just it's hard enough. This is all hard enough, and I can't make. I don't have other people. I don't have a team. I don't have infrastructure. I don't have like generally when people do shit like this, they have support, and I've got nothing, nada. And it's stressful and it's hard, and I'm collecting all the information and doing all the things and writing all the books and being the personality, and it's just a lot. And for what? I'm pretty sure my 2 subscribers only did so out of pity and aren't actually really paying attention to my writing or the blog. I'm pretty sure most of my hits are either bullshit or bots or are just new people showing up and being like, this sucks and never coming back. So I don't, sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. I really don't. Sometimes the futility of it all really gets to me and the lack of like I feel like it's all just hopeless sometimes. And I guess I'm in a bit of a funk right now. Anyway, my name is Andrew Getzi. My brand is 99% Geek, found at 99geeks.ca. I'm a writer writing monthly chapters of novels like episodes of TV shows, releasing them in 4 weekly parts, so teasing in 3 acts on Sundays on my Patreon page at patreon.com/99geek. At the end of the month, the finished chapter is added to the PDFs attached at the bottom of every post. Finally, the finished books are self-published on Amazon. There's urban fantasy tales about a teenage girl turned into a vampire against her will, or a scorned lover investigating paranormal phenomena, or a journalist covering news and politics in the Middle East. There's a sci-fi story about people on a dying world trying to build a ship to a new one. There's a fantasy story about a fallen angel trying to stop the end of the world, and there's more coming. And it's all attached at the bottom of every post on the site in convenient PDF format, readable on computers, tablets, ebook readers, and phones. I also have a Geekly Weekly blog and host video game playthroughs and matchmaking streams on Twitch, and eventually post them on my YouTube and Patreon pages. So stay tuned and maybe subscribe. It's only $1, and the support you show will go a very long way, I promise. There are also higher tiers. Give $5 one month, and you can name a character or location or suggest a thing you might want to see. Basically, you get to give a noun, and then I promise to incorporate that noun into one of my stories somehow. Maybe not the same month you give the suggestion, but within one cycle of books guaranteed. No matter how crazy, you can't sabotage me. I promise. And you can keep giving nouns for every month you pay at the $5 tier. Or if you give $10, you don't get 2 nouns, but you can give a description. Describe the personality of your character, or the look of your location, or the importance of your item. For $10, you get a noun and a description. You can also give $1 towards supporting my efforts at video game streaming or my weekly blog. If you don't want to subscribe on Patreon, you can also give at paypal.me/99geek. And for a limited time, the same rules about touching a noun applied there. You can write it down below your very contribution. I'm probably going to at least remove that line starting next phase. I'm as poor as it gets, living paycheck to paycheck, and sometimes starving, so I understand if you are too. I don't want to take food out of your mouth, so your attention is enough. Say something, comment here, at the very least. Follow me on Twitter at Andrew Getzi, or Instagram at WingCommander4, or email me at aldon@gmail.com. Live long and prosper. May the force be with you. Long live Marceline the Vampire Queen. We are the 99% Geek.